Hello, and welcome to Tired Thinker, a place where ideas slow down and reflection finds room to breathe. Tonight's gentle musing is about something subtle yet profound, the weight of thought itself. Ideas are like gravity in their own way, unseen but always tugging at us. They shape the choices we make, the paths we walk, and even the quiet moments we carry inside. Most days, we hardly notice the thoughts holding us steady, yet they're there, pulling us toward meaning, toward memory, toward the futures we dream of. Before we drift into this exploration, I'd love to know, where are you listening from, and what time of day is it, in the small orbit of your world? It feels strange and beautiful, doesn't it? A video about the pull of thinking, and here we are, scattered across the globe, all gently caught in the same moment. If you find this slower pace of thought soothing, or if you just want a place to rest your mind after the noise of the day, I'd be grateful if you gave the video a like, or softly subscribed. It helps this little channel find others who might need a pocket of quiet reflection too. Now, let's begin. Failure is often treated as proof that something went wrong and nothing good can come from it. That belief shuts down the chance to learn. Failure is not the end of the process, but part of it. When you treat failure as feedback, you turn it into information you can use. Every setback carries details about what worked, what did not, and what needs to change. Think of an engineer testing a new design. The prototype breaks under pressure. If the engineer calls it failure, the project looks like a waste. But the broken prototype shows exactly where the design was weak. That weak point becomes a target for the next version. The same holds true in daily life. If you try to start a workout routine and stop after a week, the experience tells you what stood in the way. Maybe the schedule was unrealistic. Maybe recovery time was too short. That is not the end of your effort. It is feedback about how to build a plan that lasts. In sports, athletes treat setbacks as data. A basketball player misses several free throws in a game. Calling it failure adds pressure and doubt. Treating it as feedback points to the mechanics of the shot, the grip, or the pace of practice. The missed shots show where to focus the next session. Improvement comes from reading those signals. Writers face the same lesson. A draft may feel flat and unconvincing. If the writer thinks of it as failure, discouragement sets in. But the draft shows where the dialogue drags, where the pacing slips, or where the argument loses strength. Each weak spot is a form of feedback that shapes the next revision. Even in relationships, what feels like failure is feedback. You may speak in a way that upsets a friend. Instead of deciding you are a bad friend, you can see it as information about what they value and how they interpret your words. That feedback helps you adjust, repair the bond, and avoid the same misstep. Every stumble, missed mark, or broken attempt contains a lesson. When you strip away the weight of the word failure and look at the event for what it shows, you see feedback you can use. That change of frame makes room for progress. Fear often grows when it is left vague. You sense something might go wrong, but you never define what that is. The unknown expands until it feels larger than it is. A simple way to cut it down is to ask, what's the worst that can happen? Naming the outcome gives shape to the fear. Once you see it, you can measure it. Most of the time, the worst outcome is not as bad as your mind suggests. Take the example of speaking up in a meeting. You worry that your idea might sound foolish. The fear grows until you stay quiet. But if you ask, what's the worst that can happen? The answer becomes clear. At most, someone might disagree or dismiss the idea. That is uncomfortable but not catastrophic. You still keep your job, you still return home at the end of the day. By naming the risk, you see that silence costs more in the long run than the chance of brief discomfort. Consider starting a small business. Fear of failure can stop people before they begin. When you ask the question, the worst case might be that the business does not make enough money and you close it. That result is disappointing. But it is not the end of everything. You return to a job, you carry the experience forward, and you have knowledge most people never gain. Seeing the real scope of the risk reduces its grip. The same approach works in personal goals. Suppose you want to train for a marathon, but fear you might not finish. The worst that can happen is you stop running mid-race. You feel tired, you walk, or you decide to withdraw. That outcome may sting, but your health remains, and you still gain the training benefits. By facing the worst case, the fear loses power, Even in relationships, the question shifts perspective. You may avoid telling a partner how you feel because you fear rejection. The worst that can happen is they do not respond as you hoped. Painful, yes, but survivable. You learn where you stand instead of living in uncertainty. Asking the question turns a shadow into a shape you can face. Think about a child trying to ride a bike for the first time. They push the pedals, lose balance, and say, "I can't ride this bike." If you add one word "yet," the meaning shifts. I can't ride this bike yet. Now it isn't failure, it's a pause in progress. That small word leaves the door open. It tells the child that learning takes time and that their effort will eventually lead to success. Without "yet," the sentence sounds final, like a wall. With "yet," it's a door waiting to be opened. Picture yourself in school facing a math problem that looks impossible. You might feel the urge to quit and say, "I don't understand this." If you reframe it as, "I don't understand this yet," the pressure drops. You acknowledge the struggle, but you also give yourself permission to grow. It doesn't dismiss the difficulty, but it signals that understanding is on its way. The word shapes your mindset from stuck to moving. In sports, the same idea applies. A runner who says, "I can't run 5 miles," shuts down the possibility of reaching that distance. A runner who says, "I can't run 5 miles yet," accepts their current limit, but stays open to change. Each training day becomes a step toward that yet. The difference is not in the body's ability, but in the mind's framing of what's possible. That mindset matters, because belief often drives practice. At work, "yet" changes how feedback feels. Imagine your boss tells you, "You don't lead meetings well." That stings and feels like a judgment set in stone. Now imagine they say, "You don't lead meetings well yet." The second version respects your current skill level, but adds faith in your ability to improve. It transforms a critique into a growth plan. You leave the meeting with a challenge, not a sentence. This shift even helps in daily habits. Say you've tried to cook and failed a few recipes. You might tell yourself, "I'm not a good cook." Add "yet," "I'm not a good cook yet." The kitchen becomes less intimidating. You still recognize the failures, but you also see room for change. Over time, "yet" keeps you coming back, which is the only way progress ever happens. Perfection sounds like a worthy goal, but it often stalls progress. When you wait until something is flawless, you delay action. You spend more time correcting, polishing, or second-guessing than moving forward. Progress, not perfection, is what builds momentum. A small step today carries more weight than waiting for the perfect move tomorrow. Think about learning a new language. If you insist on speaking only when your grammar is perfect, you might stay silent for years. But if you focus on progress, you try words, you make mistakes, and you learn through correction. The imperfect attempts move you closer to fluency. Each broken sentence is a step, while perfection would have left you at the starting line. The same pattern appears in fitness. A person who demands perfection might skip a workout because they cannot complete the full routine. They wait until the perfect schedule lines up before they commit. Another person accepts progress. They do a short run or lift weights for 15 minutes. That effort is not perfect, but it builds strength and habit. Over weeks and months, the consistent progress leads to results far beyond what perfection could ever produce. Writers see this every time they face a blank page. If you wait for the perfect sentence, you end up with nothing. If you write a rough draft, you create something to work with. The draft may be clumsy, but it gives you material to shape. Progress puts words on paper, and revision sharpens them. Perfection only arrives because progress came first. Even in professional settings, progress is the driver. A team designing software may be tempted to hold back until the product is flawless. Yet releasing a workable version early provides real feedback from users. The product may have flaws, but each release improves with the information gained. The progress leads to a stronger final result than holding back in search of an unattainable perfect launch. Perfection is an ideal that never arrives. Progress is concrete and measurable. You can see it in small gains, in attempts that fall short but still move you forward. When the focus shifts from flawless results to steady movement, growth becomes possible and sustainable. Think in decades, act in days. The long view sets your direction, the short view sets your pace. When you link the two, Work compounds and momentum builds. Take a career path. In 10 years, you want to be a senior engineer. That goal shapes today's actions. Read one design paper, review a pull request with care, or help a teammate solve a problem. Each small step feels minor but adds up. Over years, the stack of daily practice makes you ready for larger projects without a sudden leap. The same applies to building a company. The decade aim might be 1 million users. Today's acts are modest. Fix a bug, talk to a handful of customers, ship a feature that smooths onboarding. These moves may seem small, but they reduce churn and create trust. The long horizon points you towards scale. The daily work keeps you alive until you reach it. Money follows the same frame. The decade plan is financial freedom. The act today is setting up an automatic transfer, raising your savings rate by a small margin, or reviewing fees. Time in the market does the heavy lifting, while your daily actions protect the system and keep it steady. Health depends on the same mix. If you want to move well at 70, you start today with a short walk, 2 sets of strength training, and a night of full sleep. Consistency beats intensity. Missing a day does not end the plan, you reset the next day. Relationships grow through the same rhythm. The decade aim is lasting trust. The act today is setting the table, listening without distraction or checking in with a friend. Over years, those habits harden into loyalty. Hold the big picture steady, but let the daily acts carry the weight. Progress compounds when you think in decades and act in days. Think of this as running a small experiment. You try something, you see what happens, and you learn. That's the frame. When you treat each step as a test, you remove the pressure to be right the first time. You focus instead on setting up conditions that help you learn fast. For example, if you want to improve how you run team meetings, you don't overhaul the whole process in one go. You test one change, like starting with a clear agenda, and then watch how people respond. If it works, you keep it. If it doesn't, you adjust and run another test. This way of thinking keeps you flexible. You avoid the trap of defending a bad plan just because you already invested in it. Instead, you treat the outcome as feedback. A failed test is not a setback. It's simply a signal that the conditions didn't match your assumptions. Imagine running a software deployment. You might roll out a new feature to a small group of users before scaling it. If errors show up, you can pull back with limited impact. The controlled test gives you real-world data at low cost. Adopting this approach requires clear definitions. You need to state what you're testing, what you expect to happen, and how you'll measure success. Without that, you end up guessing about results. Let's say you want to change how you write reports. Instead of saying, "I'll try to make them better," you set a clear test, reduce the report length by half, and ask 3 colleagues if it improved clarity. That gives you direct input you can act on. The mindset also helps with bigger decisions. If you face uncertainty, you break the choice into smaller tests instead of committing all at once. Picture a company considering a new market. Instead of opening 5 locations at once, they start with one pop-up store. The results tell them whether to expand or stop. By calling everything a test, you stay focused on learning. You expect adjustments, you accept surprises, and you stay grounded in evidence rather than hope. The cycle of test, observe, and adapt becomes your way to move forward without getting stuck. Assuming positive intent means starting from the idea that people are trying to do their best, even when their actions cause friction. It doesn't mean ignoring mistakes or avoiding hard conversations. It means you choose to believe that their motive is not to harm, but to solve a problem, meet a need, or act within what they see as reasonable. This approach changes how you listen, how you respond, and how conflicts unfold. Consider a coworker who sends a short, blunt message. If you assume they're being rude, you react defensively and the tension escalates. But if you assume they're pressed for time and trying to be efficient, you can reply with clarity instead of irritation. The context doesn't erase the tone, but it shifts the meaning you attach to it. The same message feels less like a personal attack and more like a practical attempt to move work forward in team settings. Assuming positive intent helps you uncover the reasons behind behavior. Imagine a developer missing a deadline. If you assume laziness, you push harder and strain the relationship. If you assume they hit a technical roadblock, you open the door for problem solving. A check-in might reveal they're waiting on missing documentation or dealing with a bug they couldn't resolve alone. By approaching them with curiosity instead of suspicion, you improve both the work and the trust. This doesn't mean you excuse every action. If a manager cancels one-on-ones repeatedly, assuming positive intent doesn't stop you from addressing the impact. What it does is frame your approach differently. Instead of saying, "You don't care about my growth," you might say, "I know your schedule is full, but I value these meetings and want to find a way to keep them." You hold them accountable while signaling you're not out to attack. On a personal level, the practice reduces stress. If a neighbor doesn't wave back, you can assume distraction rather than hostility. If a friend is late to dinner, you can assume traffic rather than disregard. These interpretations may not always be right, but they prevent unnecessary conflict and give space for real issues to surface without added resentment. Choosing to see intent in a positive light makes it easier to address behavior without damaging relationships. It sets a baseline of trust that allows direct communication without defensiveness. Every choice carries a trade-off. When you say yes to one option, you say no to another. Economists call this the opportunity cost. It is the value of the best alternative you give up. Many people overlook it because the cost is not on a receipt. It hides in the background. But if you train yourself to weigh opportunity costs, you make cleaner decisions and avoid regrets. Consider time. If you spend 2 hours scrolling online, the opportunity cost might be the book you did not read, the workout you skipped, or the project you left untouched. The lost alternative is often more valuable than the choice you made. Once you recognize this, the decision shifts. You still might choose rest or leisure, but you do it with awareness of what you are giving up. Think about money. Say you have $1,000 and you buy a new phone. The opportunity cost is not only the money gone, but also what that $1,000 could have earned if invested or saved. It could cover a course that grows your skills, or it could reduce debt. Framing the purchase against its best alternative shows the real weight of the choice. Opportunity cost also applies in careers. Imagine you stay in a job you dislike because it feels safe. The cost is the experience, network, and growth you might gain elsewhere. Staying put looks free on the surface, but the lost years carry a high price. When you factor in the missed skills and future income, the decision changes shape. Even relationships reflect this principle. If you spend your energy with people who drain you, the cost is the time you could share with those who strengthen you. The opportunity cost is measured not just in hours, but in the quality of connection. By naming opportunity costs, you pull hidden trade-offs into the open. The question is not only what do I gain if I choose this, but also what do I give up by not choosing something else. That lens keeps decisions grounded and honest, because the true cost always includes the path not taken. Jealousy comes naturally. You see someone succeed and feel a pinch of envy. It can feel heavy, like a weight on your mind. Most people let it linger. It breeds comparison and self-doubt. But jealousy can also become a tool. If you shift the question, instead of asking why them and not me, ask what can I learn from them. Take a coworker who gets promoted. You might feel a flash of jealousy. The question, what can I learn, shifts your view. You observe their habits. Did they speak up more in meetings? Did they volunteer for projects that were visible to leadership? Did they develop a skill you haven't focused on? You turn the emotion into data. Each insight becomes actionable rather than destructive. Jealousy in creative work follows the same path. You see a peer publish an article, launch a product, or gain followers online. The initial reaction might be to measure yourself against them. Instead, ask what methods or choices led to their results. Did they post consistently? Did they connect with mentors? Did they experiment with new ideas? The answer informs your own strategy without judgment or resentment. Even in personal relationships, the shift works. You notice friends or acquaintances living differently, traveling or handling challenges in ways you admire. The impulse to compare can feel negative, but curiosity reveals opportunity. You might learn a new habit, communication approach, or perspective. Jealousy becomes guidance instead of a barrier. The shift also protects your focus. Comparing yourself endlessly consumes mental energy. Turning envy into curiosity channels that energy toward growth. You study patterns, extract lessons, and adjust your actions. You stop dwelling on what you lack and start exploring what you can build. Over time, this habit changes how you see others. Achievements become examples instead of threats. You observe with interest, not judgment. Each instance of jealousy becomes a chance to collect knowledge. You practice learning in real time, making the world around you a source of insight instead of a trigger for self-doubt. Turning jealousy into curiosity transforms emotion into action. It replaces comparison with learning and keeps your focus on your own growth rather than someone else's success. Problems appear in every part of life. They can feel like threats. They can make you freeze or panic, but you can choose to see them differently. Treat problems as puzzles. This changes how you respond. It shifts focus from fear to curiosity, from avoidance to action. Take work. A project misses a deadline. If you see it as a threat, you panic. You blame teammates. You stress over reputation. The problem feels bigger than it is. If you see it as a puzzle, you break it down. What steps were delayed? Which resources are missing? Who can help? You identify the pieces and look for patterns. The goal becomes solving the puzzle, not escaping the stress. Think about personal finance. You face an unexpected bill. If you view it as a threat, you worry and freeze. If you treat it as a puzzle, you look for solutions. Can you rearrange payments? Can you cut one expense temporarily? Can you earn extra income this week? Each question is a puzzle piece. Fitting them together reduces risk and gives control. Even in relationships, this mindset helps. A conflict with a friend or partner can feel like a personal attack. Seeing it as a puzzle changes the frame. What triggered the argument? What is the underlying need? What small step can you take to resolve it? You focus on understanding the pieces, not fearing the fallout. Problems at work, life or health are rarely solved in one move. Seeing them as puzzles encourages iteration. You test one solution, observe results, adjust, and try again. You learn from each attempt. Each failure is feedback, not a disaster. The pieces you gather build toward a complete picture. The puzzle approach reduces stress because it narrows focus to what you can handle. You stop imagining worst-case scenarios and start mapping known elements. The unknown becomes a challenge to decode, not a source of dread. You stay calm, you stay active, and you stay in control. Seeing problems as puzzles keeps your mind engaged. You gather data, test hypotheses, and connect the dots. The problem becomes manageable, the task becomes actionable, and each solved piece makes the bigger picture clearer. Small tasks pile up fast. Email, dishes, minor messages, filing papers, sending reminders, they all sit in your mind and demand attention. The 2-minute rule keeps these from becoming mountains. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. The effort to delay it is often higher than the effort to finish it now. Consider email. You open a message, see a quick question, and pause to reply later. By the end of the day, your inbox has 10 more messages like that. Each one adds friction. If you answer immediately, the task is gone. You save the mental energy of keeping it in mind. Your inbox shrinks and your focus clears. The rule also works at home. You notice a cup left on the counter. Washing it now takes 20 seconds. Ignoring it leaves it for later, adding to the pile of dishes. That pile becomes a bigger task and a source of stress. By acting immediately, you prevent accumulation. Small wins compound. At work, the principle applies to scheduling. You see an open slot of 15 minutes. Sending a calendar invite or confirming a meeting takes 2 minutes. Doing it immediately avoids back and forth emails later. These small actions keep your workflow smooth. Even personal habits benefit. Tossing trash, putting clothes away, or updating a list takes less than 2 minutes. Delaying adds clutter. Each minor task you complete immediately builds an environment that is easier to manage. The 2-minute rule also changes mindset. You stop overthinking small tasks. You train your brain to act instead of postpone. Tasks that seem insignificant on their own accumulate into efficiency. Each quick completion builds momentum. This approach does not replace planning or prioritization. Longer projects still need focus and structure, but by handling quick tasks immediately, you free time and energy for bigger work. You reduce friction, prevent clutter, and maintain clarity. Applying the 2-minute rule consistently keeps small tasks from controlling your day. Quick actions prevent accumulation, preserve focus, and make larger work easier to manage. Completing small items now is a simple strategy that improves both productivity and mental space. A to-do list shows what needs to get done. It keeps tasks in mind, but it does not guarantee they will happen. Tasks linger, get postponed, and create stress. Scheduling tasks in your calendar changes that. When a task has a set time, it moves from an idea to a plan. Consider a work project. You have to write a report, review a spreadsheet, and prepare a presentation. On a to-do list, these tasks sit side by side. You pick one when you feel ready. Often the easier or more pleasant task wins. Important work gets delayed. If you schedule each task in your calendar, the report gets a slot from 10 to 11, the spreadsheet from 11 to 11:30, and the presentation prep from 2 to 3. Each task has a deadline built into your day. You act on it rather than hope for the right moment. The same principle applies at home. Cleaning, paying bills, and making calls can get pushed aside. Writing them on a list creates mental clutter. Putting them in your calendar turns them into appointments. You treat them as non-negotiable blocks, just like a meeting or class. Calendars also help with energy management. You can schedule demanding tasks when your focus is highest and simpler tasks during low energy periods. Reviewing your day, you can see whether you have overloaded one period or left gaps. A to-do list cannot show time conflicts. Scheduling also reduces decision fatigue. When your day is set, you do not spend energy deciding what to tackle next. You follow a plan. This makes it easier to start work because the next step is already determined. Even small tasks benefit. Sending emails, making quick calls, or reviewing notes can get forgotten on a list. Scheduling them ensures they are done. You see progress instead of carrying mental weight. By scheduling tasks, you turn abstract intentions into concrete action. You allocate time realistically, prevent procrastination, and maintain control over your day. Tasks move from reminders on paper to results in reality. Each scheduled block increases clarity and ensures work gets completed efficiently. Long tasks often feel overwhelming. You sit down to write a report, study for an exam, or clean a workspace, and the work seems endless. Your mind wanders, and productivity drops. Breaking work into 25-minute Pomodoro Sprints solves this problem. Each sprint is a fixed period of focused effort, followed by a short break. The time limit creates urgency and keeps attention sharp. Consider writing a report. You set a timer for 25 minutes and focus on one section. You ignore emails, messages, and distractions. You write as much as you can in that window. When the timer rings, you take a 5-minute break. You stretch, grab water, or step outside. After the break, you return to another 25-minute sprint, either continuing the same section or starting the next one. The work becomes manageable, measured in short bursts, rather than endless hours. The method works for learning too. Studying a new language or reviewing technical material benefits from these focused intervals. You set a timer, work on exercises or flashcards, and pause to reset your mind. This reduces fatigue and improves retention. Pomodoro Sprints also reveal patterns in your energy and focus. You notice which times of day are best for deep work. You see which types of tasks require more effort. Over time, you plan sprints according to your natural rhythm, placing demanding work when focus is high and lighter tasks when it dips. Even routine tasks improve. Email, administrative work, or household chores can get Pomodoro treatment. The short intervals prevent procrastination. You start quickly because the effort feels contained. Completing a sprint creates momentum for the next one. The structure also reduces decision fatigue. You do not debate what to work on or how long to spend. Each sprint has a clear beginning and end. You measure progress in sprints rather than vague hours. By breaking work into 25-minute sprints, large projects become achievable. The method keeps attention sharp, energy sustainable, and progress visible. Tasks get done consistently, focus improves, and mental clutter decreases. Each sprint turns a daunting workload into a series of manageable, productive intervals. You start your day with a long list of tasks. Some feel small, like replying to emails or tidying your desk. Others feel heavy, like writing a report, making a difficult phone call, or preparing for a presentation. Most people tackle the easy things first. It feels good to check boxes quickly, but the small wins rarely move the needle on your day. The tasks that matter most tend to weigh on your mind. They create tension and stress. You know you should do them, but you keep pushing them aside. This is where the idea of eat the frog comes in. It means doing the hardest, most important task first without delay. Imagine you are a writer. Your big task today is to finish a chapter of your book. You know it will take several hours and deep focus. Every time you sit down, other tasks pull you away. You answer emails, you scroll social media, you organize your notes. These small tasks feel productive, but your book doesn't get any closer to completion. Now imagine you decide to start with the chapter. You set your phone aside, close your email, and write for 2 hours. When you finish, a weight lifts. The hardest work is done. Everything else on your list feels smaller and easier in comparison. This approach works because your brain starts the day fresh. Energy levels are highest in the morning for many people. Decisions are sharper, willpower is stronger. Tackling the hardest task first uses this energy where it matters most. The sense of accomplishment also builds momentum. Once you complete the frog, you feel capable. You carry that confidence into the rest of the day. Eating the frog also reduces stress. Leaving difficult tasks undone creates a cloud over your day. It nags at you in meetings, over lunch, even while relaxing. Completing the task clears that cloud. You no longer think about it. Your mind focuses on what comes next. The method requires discipline. It means facing discomfort early. The task might be unpleasant. It might feel intimidating. You have to resist the urge to start with easy wins. Over time, doing the hardest task first becomes a habit. It changes how you approach work. You notice you finish more important tasks. You feel less tension. Your day becomes smoother, more controlled. This strategy works for any type of work. For students, it might be writing a paper before checking social media. For managers, it could be tackling a difficult decision before reviewing reports. For artists, it might mean sketching a challenging piece before doodling smaller ideas. The principle stays the same: do the hardest thing first. Tasks often arrive in a scattered way. You check emails, make phone calls, review documents, and run errands. Switching between different types of work wastes time and energy. Batching similar tasks together solves this problem. When you group related tasks, you reduce the mental effort needed to shift focus. Consider email management. Instead of responding to messages as they arrive throughout the day, set aside a block of time to process them all at once. You scan, reply, and archive messages in one session. This keeps your attention in a single mode and prevents constant interruptions. You finish faster than spreading responses over hours. The same principle works with calls. If you need to make several short phone calls or virtual meetings, schedule them back to back. You prepare once, stay in the same mindset, and handle the communication efficiently. Switching between calls and other types of work often leads to mistakes or forgotten details. Batching keeps your focus aligned with the task type. Administrative work benefits as well. Filing documents, updating spreadsheets, or reviewing reports can be grouped. You set a dedicated period for these tasks. You gather all the materials, set up your workspace, and work through them in order. The work flows more smoothly because you avoid repeatedly changing context. Even creative tasks can be batched. Writing multiple articles, designing slides, or creating social media content works better when you focus on similar steps together. You brainstorm ideas for several projects, then move on to drafting, and finally to editing. Each session builds on the same type of thinking. Batching also frees mental bandwidth. You do not need to constantly remind yourself what type of work to start next. You reduce decision fatigue by grouping tasks with similar tools, skills, or thought patterns. By batching similar tasks, you save time, reduce stress, and maintain higher quality in your work. Work moves faster because attention stays focused, errors decrease, and energy is used efficiently. Tasks that once felt scattered and draining become organized and manageable, making each workday more productive and controlled. Deadlines create urgency. They force attention and shape behavior. Without a deadline, tasks stretch indefinitely. You put off writing a report, reviewing a document, or completing a project because there is no immediate consequence. Setting a deadline, even one you invent, changes that. You define a clear endpoint and push yourself to act. Imagine a report due in 2 weeks. Without a deadline, you may work sporadically, thinking you have time. You check emails, respond to messages, and perform small tasks instead. Progress is slow, and stress builds as the deadline approaches. If you set a personal deadline for 1 week, you create a fixed target. You know when work must be done, and your focus sharpens. Each day has a clear objective: finish a section, gather data, or write conclusions. Artificial deadlines work well for large projects. Suppose you must complete a presentation in a month. You break the work into parts and assign deadlines for each section. Research is due in a week. The first draft is due in 2 weeks. Slides are completed in 3 weeks. Each step has a defined endpoint, which keeps work on track and prevents last-minute rushes. Deadlines also improve decision-making. When time is limited, you prioritize what matters most. You stop overanalyzing minor details. You allocate effort where it produces the greatest impact. Artificial deadlines allow this focus without waiting for external pressure. Even routine tasks benefit. Paying bills, cleaning a space, or organizing files moves faster when you set a specific time to finish. You do not delay indefinitely. You see progress because the endpoint is visible. Deadlines create momentum. They turn vague intentions into concrete actions. Your attention aligns with the task and your energy is directed efficiently. You accomplish more in the same time because the limit forces you to focus. By using deadlines, whether real or artificial, you control the pace of work. Tasks get completed steadily, focus improves, and effort is concentrated where it matters. Deadlines turn procrastination into action and make consistent progress achievable in both small and large projects. Every day, distractions pull you in many directions. Notifications ping on your phone. Emails pile up. Social media scrolls endlessly. Meetings run over time. Even small interruptions, like a coworker dropping by or a sudden idea, break your focus. Most people react to these distractions without thinking. They answer messages, check feeds, or shift to less important work. The result is a day full of activity, but low in progress. One method to counter this is keeping a not-to-do list. A not-to-do list is simple. It records actions you want to avoid because they steal time and energy. Unlike a normal to-do list, it focuses on behaviors that reduce productivity. You write down habits or tasks that often interrupt deep work. For example, you might list checking email first thing in the morning, browsing social media, or attending non-essential meetings. The list acts as a reminder and a boundary. Imagine you are a graphic designer. Your biggest project is completing a client's branding package. You know it requires focus and uninterrupted time. In the past, you kept checking your inbox every hour. You noticed your work took longer and quality slipped. You decide to create a not-to-do list. You write no email before 11 a.m., no social media during work blocks, no unplanned calls without scheduling. You place the list where you can see it. When you start your work block, you glance at the list. Each time a distraction tempts you, the list serves as a cue to stay on task. Over the week, you notice you finish the branding package faster and with fewer errors. The list works because it externalizes discipline. Your brain does not need to constantly weigh options. You remove decisions that waste energy. It also creates accountability. When you slip, you recognize the action and return to focus. A not-to-do list can include habits, meetings, apps, or even types of multitasking. It can evolve over time. You observe what consistently interrupts your work and add it to the list. For a student, it might be no phone during study sessions. For a manager, it could be avoiding back-to-back meetings without breaks. The key is clarity. Write down exactly what to avoid, check the list regularly, and adjust it. Over time, the list trains attention. It reduces wasted effort and frees time for what truly matters. The practice is simple, yet its effect on productivity is significant. Routines reduce the number of decisions you make each day. Every choice consumes mental energy. Deciding what to eat for breakfast, what to wear, or how to start the workday adds up. Over time, these small choices create fatigue and reduce focus for more important tasks. Limiting decisions through routines frees attention for work that matters. Consider breakfast. If you eat the same meal every morning, you remove one daily decision. You do not spend time weighing options or worrying about nutrition. Your energy is preserved for tasks that require creativity or problem solving. Some people choose a simple routine of oatmeal with fruit or eggs with toast. The exact choice is less important than consistency and reducing cognitive load. The same principle applies to clothing. Selecting the same style, color, or outfit for work eliminates morning indecision. You do not spend time or energy debating what fits or looks appropriate. Uniforms, personal or professional, work for the same reason. Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg famously chose simple, repeated clothing to limit decisions and conserve mental energy. Work routines also matter. Starting the day with the same sequence of actions, checking emails, reviewing a task list, or writing for a set period, creates structure. You do not waste time figuring out what to do first. The routine guides your actions, and you focus on execution rather than planning. Exercise, meetings, and even small habits benefit from routines. By setting fixed times for these activities, you reduce choices. You do not negotiate with yourself about when or whether to act. Momentum builds because action becomes automatic. Limiting decisions with routines does not remove flexibility entirely. You can adjust when necessary, but the baseline is consistent. Fewer trivial choices reduce fatigue, improve focus, and increase productivity. When you establish predictable habits for daily activities, your mind remains clearer for significant challenges. Routines turn repeated tasks into automated actions. They preserve energy for decisions that truly matter. By streamlining everyday choices, you create mental space to handle complex work and solve problems effectively. Your day moves more smoothly, and attention stays aligned with priorities rather than scattered across trivial options. Starting meetings with an agenda sets a clear path. When participants know the topics in advance, they prepare appropriately and focus on the issues at hand. Without an agenda, discussions wander, decisions stall, and time is wasted. A simple agenda can be a list of items to cover, each with an estimated time. For example, a 1-hour team meeting might begin with updates for 10 minutes, move to problem solving for 30 minutes, and end with planning for 20 minutes. This structure keeps everyone aligned and prevents distractions. Agendas also help prioritize. Not every topic deserves equal attention. Listing items in order of importance ensures critical issues get addressed first. If time runs short, less important items can be postponed rather than rushed or ignored. The agenda acts as a guide, reducing the need for constant negotiation over what to discuss next. Participants know what to expect and can focus on meaningful contributions. Ending meetings with action items turns discussion into results. Many meetings conclude without clear next steps, leaving participants uncertain about responsibilities. Action items define who will do what and by when. For instance, if a team identifies a software bug, the action item specifies the person responsible for fixing it, the timeline, and any follow-up required. This creates accountability and ensures progress continues after the meeting ends. Action items also improve memory and tracking. When documented and shared, participants can review what was agreed upon and follow through. This reduces repeated conversations and avoids confusion. The meeting becomes a tool for execution rather than just conversation. When you combine agendas and action items, meetings gain structure and purpose. The agenda guides discussion, while action items capture decisions and assignments. This approach makes meetings predictable, efficient, and productive. Teams spend less time clarifying and more time acting. Participants leave with a clear understanding of priorities and responsibilities, and projects move forward steadily. By starting with an agenda and ending with action items, you turn meetings from unstructured gatherings into focused sessions that drive results. Time is used efficiently, decisions are documented, and accountability is built into the process. Asking what's the single most important thing focuses attention. Most days, you face dozens of tasks. Emails, meetings, reports, and small problems compete for your time. Without clarity, everything feels urgent, but little gets done. By identifying the single most important thing, you prioritize the work that has the greatest impact. Consider a product manager launching a new feature. They might have 10 tasks on their list: responding to emails, reviewing design mock-ups, updating documentation, planning marketing, and checking metrics. If they ask themselves the question, they realize the most important task is finalizing the feature specifications. Completing this task ensures development moves forward. The other items can wait without affecting the timeline. The single most important thing is not always obvious. It requires thinking about outcomes rather than activity. Writing a report might take hours, but if it does not influence key decisions, it is not the most important. A short meeting with a client could be brief but essential. If it secures funding, time spent on the highest impact activity outweighs time spent on busy work. This approach also applies to teams. In a weekly meeting, instead of listing all projects, a leader can ask, "What is the single most important thing this week?" The team agrees on the top priority, aligns efforts, and allocates resources efficiently. Everyone understands where to focus. Less critical tasks are noted, but do not distract from the main objective. Asking the question regularly builds discipline. Each morning or week, you identify the priority. At the end of the day, you check if you completed it. This habit prevents drift and ensures that actions align with meaningful outcomes. It clarifies trade-offs, because saying yes to one thing means saying no to others. By consistently asking, "What's the single most important thing?" you concentrate energy on high-value work. Decisions become easier, progress becomes visible, you reduce wasted effort, and make every day more effective. This question turns a busy schedule into a focused plan that drives results and keeps priorities clear. Teaching what you learn strengthens understanding. When you read a book, watch a tutorial, or attend a lecture, your brain takes in information. You might feel like you understand it, but comprehension is often shallow. Explaining the idea to someone else forces you to organize your thoughts and identify gaps. It turns passive knowledge into active skill. For example, imagine you learn a new programming language. You study syntax, functions, and libraries. If you stop at reading, your knowledge may fade or remain incomplete. But if you create a short tutorial for a colleague or write a blog post explaining key concepts, you confront areas you do not fully grasp. You realize where you need to practice more, which reinforces learning. Teaching works because it forces simplification. To explain a concept clearly, you break it into smaller parts. You find analogies, examples, and step-by-step methods. This process makes your understanding more concrete. Consider a finance professional learning a new reporting method. If they teach a junior analyst, they have to structure the process, explain calculations, and show applications. This repetition and articulation deepen their own knowledge. It also highlights assumptions. Many times, we think we understand something until we must communicate it. Explaining forces you to clarify terms and processes. If a concept feels vague while teaching, you know it needs review. This feedback loop is immediate and practical. Unlike passive study, teaching also encourages retention. People remember information longer when they actively use it. Writing notes, giving talks, or mentoring applies learning repeatedly. Each time you teach, you reinforce memory, test understanding, and adapt explanations. Over time, knowledge becomes internalized and easier to retrieve under pressure. Even informal teaching works. Explaining a concept to a friend, summarizing an article to a team, or sharing lessons from a project strengthens your grasp. The act of translating what you know into clear language cements it in your mind. Learning becomes not just personal but shared, and the effort to teach transforms temporary knowledge into long-term expertise. The Feynman Technique helps you understand anything deeply by explaining it simply. The method starts with picking a concept you want to learn. You write it down as if you are teaching it to someone who knows nothing about the subject. This forces you to use plain language and avoid jargon you do not fully understand. For example, if you are learning how photosynthesis works, you might start by writing, "Plants use sunlight to turn water and carbon dioxide into food." This statement is simple, but it points out where your understanding may be shallow. When you try to expand it further, you notice gaps. How exactly does sunlight convert into chemical energy? What role do chloroplasts play? These questions guide your next step, research and clarification. Once you fill in the gaps, you rewrite your explanation in simple terms. You aim to explain the process without skipping steps or assuming prior knowledge. For instance, you could say, "Chloroplasts in leaves capture sunlight. They use this energy to mix water and carbon dioxide to make sugar, which feeds the plant." You can also add analogies. It's like a factory where sunlight is the power, water and carbon dioxide are raw materials, and sugar is the final product. Analogies help you and others grasp complex processes quickly. The Feynman technique also includes reviewing your explanation and identifying areas where your language still relies on vague or complex terms. If you stumble or can't simplify a section, it shows what you do not fully understand. You return to the source material, learn it better, and revise your explanation. Finally, teaching someone else, or even talking out loud to yourself, strengthens retention. Explaining in your own words makes abstract ideas concrete. It also highlights assumptions you were unaware of and shows where thinking is unclear. By repeating this process, you turn memorization into true understanding. Complex topics become manageable when broken down into simple explanations. The act of teaching and rewriting cements knowledge in a way passive reading never does. Over time, the Feynman technique builds confidence in your grasp of subjects and sharpens your ability to communicate them clearly, without relying on complex terms or surface-level knowledge. Reading summaries before diving into a full book helps you understand the structure and main ideas quickly. A summary gives you a roadmap, showing the key points, arguments, and examples the author uses. This allows you to focus your attention when reading the full book. You know what to look for and what matters most. For instance, imagine you want to read a book on economics that covers supply and demand, inflation, and monetary policy. If you read a summary first, you will get a clear picture of the core concepts and how they connect. When you start the full text, you can follow the author's explanations without getting lost in details. You can identify which sections are most important and which examples are critical to understanding the arguments. Summaries also help you decide whether a book is worth reading in full. Not every book matches your goals or level of understanding. If a summary reveals that the book focuses on topics you already know or explains concepts at a level that is too basic or too advanced, you can save time and energy. This allows you to prioritize books that provide the most value. Another benefit is that summaries improve retention. By previewing the key ideas, your brain forms a framework for the information. When you read the full book, you connect details to this framework. For example, if the summary mentions a case study about a company navigating a market crisis, you will remember it more easily when you encounter it in the full text. The context is already familiar, so comprehension improves. Reading summaries first also allows faster application. If you need to use the book's ideas in work or study, the summary gives you the main takeaways quickly. You can start applying principles while reading, rather than waiting until the end. This approach turns reading from a passive activity into a more active process. By starting with summaries, you gain clarity, focus, and efficiency. You understand the big picture before the details. You save time, retain more information, and use what you learn more effectively. It makes reading purposeful and strategic, allowing you to get the most out of each book. Taking handwritten notes strengthens memory and understanding in ways typing cannot. When you write by hand, your brain processes information more deeply. You cannot type every word as quickly as you can think, so you summarize, paraphrase, and organize ideas actively. This process forces you to make sense of the material as you write it, which improves comprehension and recall. For example, imagine you attend a lecture on history. If you type notes verbatim on a laptop, your focus may drift. You copy words without processing them fully. By contrast, writing by hand forces you to pick out key points, structure the information, and decide what matters most. You connect ideas in your own words. Later, when reviewing, your memory is aided by the physical act of writing and the mental work you did to condense the content. Handwritten notes also support pattern recognition. Drawing arrows, boxes, or diagrams links concepts visually. If you study a topic like biology, sketching a diagram of a cell or a process such as photosynthesis helps you remember it better than typing a list of terms. Your brain associates shapes and spatial arrangements with the ideas themselves, creating stronger mental hooks. Another advantage is reduced distraction. Laptops and tablets can tempt you to check emails or browse, breaking focus. A notebook keeps your attention on the material. You interact directly with the content without digital interruptions, which reinforces learning. Handwritten notes also allow flexible review strategies. You can highlight, underline, or add side notes to emphasize connections. Later, when revisiting your notes, the layout and personal annotations help you recall the material. For instance, seeing a margin note about a key insight can trigger memory more reliably than a typed line in a digital document. Writing by hand takes more time, but this effort is part of what makes it effective. The act of slowing down, processing, and translating ideas into your own words strengthens neural pathways. Over time, handwritten notes create a personalized knowledge base. Each page represents both information and the mental work you put into understanding it, making learning more durable and memory more reliable. Spaced repetition helps you remember information over the long term by spreading out review sessions. Instead of cramming all at once, you revisit material at increasing intervals. This method works with the way your brain strengthens memory. Each time you recall something after a delay, the memory becomes more durable. For example, imagine you are learning a new language. On the first day, you memorize a list of 10 words. The next day, you review the same words. Then you wait 3 days, then a week, and so on. Each time you recall a word, the neural connections associated with it grow stronger. Words that might have been forgotten after a few days stay accessible for weeks or months. This approach prevents forgetting and reduces the need for constant relearning. Spaced repetition works best with small, digestible chunks. Instead of trying to memorize a whole textbook, break it into key facts, formulas, or concepts. Use flashcards, whether physical or digital, to test yourself. For instance, if you study anatomy, create a card for each bone with its name on one side and location or function on the other. Review each card on a schedule that gradually extends over time. Another advantage is that spaced repetition highlights weak areas. If you forget a card or concept, you review it more frequently. This targeted repetition strengthens gaps in knowledge while saving time on material you already know. Over weeks, your overall retention improves without extra effort. Spaced repetition also encourages active recall. Passive reading or highlighting is less effective because the brain does not practice retrieving information. By forcing yourself to recall answers or explain concepts, you engage memory pathways directly. For example, testing yourself on historical dates or math formulas reinforces your ability to remember and apply them, rather than simply recognizing them when you see them written down. This method takes patience, but the results are reliable. Knowledge learned through spaced repetition becomes durable. You remember more, forget less, and build a foundation for more advanced learning. Over time, the strategy transforms studying from a short-term effort into long-term mastery. Learning in public means sharing what you are learning as you go, instead of waiting until you feel you know everything. By putting your ideas, experiments, and insights out where others can see them, you create accountability and reinforce your own understanding. Explaining concepts to others forces you to clarify your thinking and spot gaps in your knowledge. For example, imagine you are learning web development. Instead of keeping all your notes and projects private, you write a blog post or share a short video explaining a new technique you learned. You might demonstrate how to build a simple interactive feature or explain the logic behind a function. In the process of teaching, you realize which steps you fully understand and which you still need to study. This reflection helps you learn faster than studying alone. Sharing also invites feedback. When others read your work, they may offer corrections, suggestions, or alternative approaches. Suppose you post a solution to a coding problem. Someone might point out a more efficient method or highlight an error. These interactions give you insights you would not have found on your own. Feedback becomes a tool for improvement rather than a source of stress. Learning in public builds connections and community. People with similar interests may engage with your content, start conversations, and share their own experiences. This network exposes you to new ideas and resources. If you are learning graphic design, sharing sketches or design processes can attract others who critique your work or provide references, helping you grow faster. The practice also reduces fear of failure. Publicly sharing progress makes mistakes normal and visible, showing that learning is a process. Mistakes become lessons rather than reasons to hide. You develop resilience and confidence by seeing that errors are part of improvement. Over time, learning in public turns knowledge into something active rather than passive. You remember more because you explain it, refine your understanding through feedback, and build skills while connecting with others. This approach transforms isolated study into a dynamic and social process, making growth faster, more concrete, and more rewarding. After reading, asking what's the key idea here helps you focus on the most important concept instead of getting lost in details. Every book, article, or report contains a central point that ties everything together. Identifying that point forces you to process the material actively, which improves understanding and memory. For example, imagine you are reading a chapter about economic incentives. The text may describe multiple examples, charts, and theories. If you stop and ask, "What's the key idea here?" You might realize the chapter is really about how people respond to incentives in predictable ways. Once you identify that, every example makes more sense, and you can summarize the chapter in a single sentence. This approach turns reading into analysis rather than passive absorption. This practice also makes it easier to explain the material to others. If someone asks what you learned, you can give a clear answer instead of stumbling through minor details. Suppose you read a report on climate policy. Instead of trying to repeat every fact, you can say, "The key idea is that early investment in renewable energy reduces long-term costs and emissions." That statement captures the essence of the material and shows you grasp the main point. Focusing on the key idea also saves time. Not every detail is equally valuable. By identifying the central concept, you can skim or skip supporting material that doesn't affect your understanding. If you are studying a scientific paper, you might focus on the hypothesis, the method, and the main result while leaving minor data tables for reference. Asking this question repeatedly creates a habit of clarity. Over time, you naturally filter information to its core message. Whether reading a business strategy document, a technical manual, or a historical essay, focusing on the key idea gives structure to your learning. It encourages mental organization, helps you retain important information, and allows you to connect ideas across topics. This habit turns reading from a task of collecting facts into a process of extracting meaning and understanding the essence of what you encounter. Chunking information into patterns helps your brain process and remember complex material more easily. Instead of trying to memorize each fact separately, you group related pieces together into a meaningful structure. This reduces mental load and makes recall faster. For example, if you are learning a new language, memorizing 50 unrelated words is difficult. If you notice patterns like grouping words by category, colors, food, or verbs, you can remember them in clusters. When you recall one word, the others in the group come more easily. This principle works in math too. Instead of remembering separate formulas, you can chunk them by type: geometry, algebra, or calculus. Recognizing patterns within each group makes it easier to solve problems. In professional settings, chunking information is equally useful. Imagine you are preparing a report with sales data from multiple regions. Rather than treating each region as an isolated point, you can group them by performance level: high, medium, low. This pattern immediately highlights trends and allows you to draw insights quickly. Another scenario is studying market competitors. Instead of analyzing each competitor individually, you can cluster them by strategy, pricing, or target audience. Seeing the pattern clarifies relationships and differences at a glance. Chunking also improves decision-making. When you face a complex problem, patterns help you predict outcomes based on past experience. For instance, if you manage a team and notice recurring issues in projects, you can group them into types such as communication gaps, technical errors, or unclear goals. Recognizing these patterns lets you address root causes instead of just symptoms. Your memory benefits from repetition within chunks. When you review material in patterns, each repetition reinforces the structure rather than isolated details. For example, reviewing a set of grouped flashcards in a study session strengthens connections between items, making them easier to retrieve later. Over time, chunking transforms scattered information into organized knowledge, helping you work faster, think clearly, and retain what matters most. Cross-training your mind by learning in unrelated fields strengthens your thinking and problem-solving. When you study topics outside your main focus, you develop new ways to approach challenges. Knowledge from one area can spark ideas in another, creating connections you would not see otherwise. For example, an engineer who studies psychology may understand better how people interact with products. They might design a tool that is easier to use because they can anticipate user behavior. A musician learning coding may spot patterns in data as naturally as reading sheet music. By combining skills from different fields, you build a mental toolkit that is flexible and creative. Cross-training also prevents mental stagnation. Working in the same field for years can limit perspective. By exploring unrelated subjects, you challenge your brain to adapt to new rules, vocabularies, and ways of thinking. This strengthens cognitive flexibility. For instance, a marketer learning basic statistics gains the ability to interpret data trends directly. without relying entirely on analysts. This skill improves decision-making and efficiency. Practical scenarios show the benefit clearly. Imagine a product manager studying biology. They notice how ecosystems balance themselves and apply that to team dynamics, creating systems that maintain stability under pressure. Or consider a writer learning finance. They gain insight into economic trends, which adds depth and accuracy to storytelling about business or policy. Unrelated knowledge can often create the edge that separates average work from exceptional work. Cross-training requires curiosity and consistency. You don't need to become an expert in everything, but engaging enough to understand core concepts allows your brain to form connections. Reading books, taking online courses, or following experts in a new field provides exposure to different frameworks and problem-solving techniques. The key is integration. When you encounter a challenge in your main field, recall ideas from your cross-training experiences. This approach allows you to apply analogies, principles, or strategies that others might miss. Over time, learning across fields develops a versatile mind, capable of seeing patterns, generating solutions, and innovating in ways that purely specialized knowledge rarely allows. Embracing a beginner's mind, or shoshin, means approaching each situation as if you are seeing it for the first time. It is the practice of setting aside assumptions and expertise to remain open to learning. Even when you have experience, adopting this mindset lets you notice details and possibilities that others might miss. For example, a software developer who has built similar applications for years might assume they know the best way to structure a system. Approaching a new project with shoshin allows them to question existing methods and explore alternative designs. They may discover a simpler solution or identify a user need that standard practices overlook. Treating each task as new encourages curiosity and prevents complacency. In another scenario, a manager meeting a new team could assume their usual approach to communication will work. With a beginner's mind, they observe team dynamics without bias, listen actively, and adjust their style to the group. They are more likely to earn trust and uncover opportunities to improve workflow. This mindset also encourages asking basic questions that reveal hidden insights, rather than assuming knowledge is already complete. Shoshin helps in personal growth as well. When learning a new language, even advanced students benefit from acting like beginners. They pay closer attention to pronunciation, sentence structure, and cultural context, which deepens understanding. Similarly, an experienced athlete returning to fundamentals can refine technique and improve performance. The key to practicing a beginner's mind is curiosity and humility. You must be willing to accept that you do not have all the answers. Observing, asking questions, and experimenting without fear of failure opens the door to learning. This approach can be applied to small daily tasks or major projects. For instance, revisiting a familiar report with shoshin might reveal patterns you overlooked before or suggest a new way to present data. By intentionally shedding assumptions and welcoming fresh perspectives, you make space for creativity and improvement. This mindset transforms routine work into discovery and complex challenges into opportunities to learn. Even in fields where you have expertise, embracing beginner's mind keeps your approach flexible, adaptive, and insightful, giving you the chance to see what others cannot. Defining the problem clearly is the first step towards solving it effectively. Without a clear understanding, you risk addressing symptoms instead of the root cause. A well-defined problem provides direction and helps you focus resources efficiently. It also makes it easier to evaluate potential solutions and measure success. Consider a company facing declining sales. A vague approach might be to push marketing harder or offer more discounts. These actions might produce short-term results, but fail to address the underlying issue. Defining the problem clearly requires asking questions. Are customers leaving because of price, quality, or service? Is the decline widespread or isolated to specific products or regions? Collecting data and observing patterns turns a general concern into a specific problem, such as sales of product X dropped 20% in region Y due to delayed shipping and poor customer support. This clarity points directly to actionable solutions. In another example, a student struggling with math homework might think the problem is, "I'm bad at math." A clearer definition would be, I consistently make mistakes in solving quadratic equations because I misapply the formula and skip steps. With this definition, the student can focus on reviewing the formula, practicing step-by-step solutions, and checking work, rather than wasting effort on unrelated topics. Defining the problem also involves framing it in the right context. For instance, an engineer tasked with reducing energy consumption in a factory might initially aim to cut total electricity usage. A better definition would consider production levels, peak demand, and equipment efficiency. This leads to targeted strategies like upgrading specific machines, adjusting schedules, or optimizing processes, rather than applying broad, ineffective measures. A clear problem statement prevents wasted effort and guides decision-making. It allows teams to align around the same goal and communicate solutions effectively. Taking the time to define a problem carefully ensures that the work that follows is relevant, focused, and measurable. By understanding exactly what needs fixing, whether in business, personal life, or learning, you can apply resources efficiently and produce solutions that truly solve the issue rather than just masking it. Clear definition is the foundation of effective problem solving. Asking, "What would this look like if it were easy?" changes how you approach challenges. Most problems feel complicated because we overthink them or follow traditional methods without questioning them. By imagining the simplest version, you uncover solutions that are often overlooked. It shifts your focus from obstacles to possibilities and helps identify steps that truly matter. Consider planning a team project. People might assume it requires long meetings, multiple approvals, and detailed charts. Asking what it would look like if it were easy leads to a simpler approach. One clear objective, a shared document, and a short weekly check-in. This approach accomplishes the same goal without unnecessary friction. It also encourages creativity because you are no longer trapped by assumptions about complexity. In daily life, think about cleaning your home. Many see it as a large, daunting task. If you ask what it would look like if it were easy, you might break it into small habits: wiping counters after cooking, keeping laundry organized, or dedicating 10 minutes each day to tidying. The task becomes manageable and less stressful, and the results accumulate steadily. Even in learning, this question has value. If mastering a new skill feels difficult, imagine what it would look like if it were easy. Instead of overwhelming yourself with theory, you focus on a simple routine, practice 5 minutes daily, review mistakes immediately, and repeat. This method builds momentum without draining energy, and progress feels natural. Asking this question also reveals unnecessary steps in systems. For example, a company might require 10 forms for a routine approval. Imagining the easy version might reduce it to one form with clear guidelines. Efficiency increases, errors decrease, and people spend more time on meaningful work. The principle works because it encourages practical thinking. It forces you to separate the core goal from distractions and complexity. When you envision the easy path, you identify shortcuts, streamline processes, and reduce friction. It does not mean avoiding effort. It means applying effort where it truly matters. Whether in work, personal projects, or learning, imagining the simple version often leads to smarter, faster, and more effective solutions. By asking this question, you challenge assumptions and discover paths that are both feasible and productive, turning seemingly complicated tasks into achievable actions. Constraints often feel like limits, but they can fuel creativity instead of stifling it. When resources, time, or tools are restricted, you are forced to think differently. Limits push you to explore ideas you might ignore when everything seems possible. By reframing constraints as opportunities, you unlock solutions that are clever, practical, and sometimes surprising. Consider writing with a word limit. At first it seems restrictive. You cannot explain every detail, and every sentence counts. This limitation forces you to focus on the essential message. You learn to communicate clearly and choose words carefully. A 200-word article requires sharper thinking than a 2,000-word essay because it removes fluff and emphasizes impact. The constraint itself drives better writing. In product design, constraints often produce innovation. A small budget may prevent using the latest technology, but it encourages creative materials, clever engineering, or unconventional design. Many successful products exist because teams worked within tight limits and had to find unique solutions. The boundary forces experimentation that a limitless approach might overlook. Time constraints work similarly. When you have a short deadline, you prioritize what matters most. You make decisions faster, test ideas quickly, and avoid overthinking. A strict timeline encourages focus and resourcefulness. Teams that embrace time limits often produce prototypes or drafts that reveal possibilities faster than those with unlimited schedules. Even in personal projects, constraints can inspire new methods. Imagine trying to cook a meal with only 5 ingredients. The restriction forces you to combine flavors differently, explore seasoning, and invent techniques you would not consider with a full pantry. These experiments often lead to dishes you would not create under normal conditions. Constraints also foster collaboration. When a team faces limits, they share ideas, challenge each other's assumptions, and find solutions together. The pressure of a boundary turns individual effort into collective creativity. Rather than seeing limits as barriers, you treat them as tools. You analyze the problem more deeply, explore alternatives, and develop inventive solutions. Over time, this approach strengthens problem-solving skills. Working within constraints becomes less about what you lack and more about what you can discover. It shifts perspective, making challenges into opportunities for original thinking and practical innovation. Inverting a problem means looking at it from the opposite angle. Instead of asking how to achieve a goal, you ask how you could cause the opposite result. This approach exposes hidden obstacles and reveals overlooked solutions. By exploring failure intentionally, you gain insight into what actually works. Take customer satisfaction as an example. Instead of asking how to make customers happy, ask how you could make them leave. Maybe you would respond slowly to inquiries, ignore complaints, or overcomplicate your product. Recognizing these actions helps you identify practices to avoid and highlights the steps that truly improve experience. Thinking in reverse sharpens understanding and clarifies priorities. In personal productivity, inversion works well. If your goal is to stay focused, ask what behaviors destroy focus. Checking social media constantly, multitasking excessively, or leaving tasks undefined would scatter attention. Once you identify these distractions, you can design your environment and routines to block them. This reverse thinking guides practical changes more effectively than simply aiming to be productive in the abstract. Innovation often benefits from inversion. A company might ask how to lose market share instead of how to grow it. Brainstorming actions like ignoring customer feedback or creating confusing interfaces forces the team to think critically about the opposite, listening carefully, simplifying, and improving engagement. The negative scenarios highlight blind spots that normal planning might miss. Even in problem solving for complex projects, inversion can clarify strategy. If a software team struggles with bugs, they can ask what would make the system fail completely. Mapping these failure paths uncovers weak points in design, testing, or communication. Addressing them strengthens the final product. Inversion also encourages creativity. By imagining the opposite, you break habitual thinking. It disrupts assumptions and surfaces unconventional solutions. A chef, for example, could ask how to ruin a dish intentionally. This thought experiment leads to discovering which ingredients or techniques matter most. The process applies to writing, design, management, and engineering. Inverting a problem is not about being negative. It is about gaining perspective. It transforms uncertainty into structured exploration. By considering what would go wrong, you learn what must go right. This method turns obstacles into guides and clarifies the path forward. Thinking backward often leads to insights that forward thinking alone cannot provide, and it trains the mind to anticipate challenges before they occur. First principles thinking means breaking a problem down to its most basic truths and reasoning up from there. It avoids relying on assumptions or comparing to what others have done. Instead of copying analogies or past solutions, you start with facts you know to be true and build your understanding from the ground up. This method exposes opportunities that conventional thinking can miss. Consider battery technology. Instead of asking how to make a better battery like the ones already on the market, break the problem into basic elements: energy storage, chemical reactions, weight, and cost. Examine what is physically possible in each area. You might discover a new material or design that others overlooked because they followed existing battery designs. Thinking from first principles gives you a path that analogy-driven thinking cannot show. In daily problem-solving, first principles help simplify complex decisions. For example, if someone wants to improve personal health, many follow standard advice about diet and exercise. Instead, breaking it down, the body needs energy, nutrients, and recovery. Then you can design habits that meet these needs efficiently rather than following generic routines. This approach reveals practical solutions tailored to your situation instead of relying on templates. Engineering uses first principles to innovate. A bridge is not built by copying other bridges exactly. Engineers analyze forces, materials, and load requirements. From those basics, they calculate the safest and most efficient design. This thinking reduces errors from assumptions and allows creative solutions that meet constraints more effectively. Even in business strategy, first principles thinking applies. Instead of mimicking competitors' marketing campaigns, ask what drives customer choice, what problems must be solved. Strip the problem to these essentials, then construct strategies that respond to facts rather than trends. First principles thinking forces clarity. It separates what is known from what is assumed. By questioning standard approaches and stripping issues to their core, you create room for innovation. Every solution built from first principles is deliberate and grounded, rather than borrowed. It encourages deep understanding, challenges conventional wisdom, and allows you to approach problems in ways others may not consider. Thinking this way changes the focus from imitation to invention. It turns complex challenges into puzzles, solvable with logic and basic truths. The 5 whys method is a simple way to uncover the root cause of a problem. Instead of stopping at the first explanation, you ask why repeatedly, usually 5 times until you reach the source. This prevents you from treating symptoms and helps you solve the real issue. Consider a factory machine that stops working. The first answer might be, the machine overheated. Ask why it overheated. The second answer could be, the cooling system failed. Ask why the cooling system failed. The third answer might be, the pump was clogged. Ask why it was clogged. The fourth answer could be, maintenance was not performed on schedule. Ask why maintenance was skipped. The fifth answer reveals, the team did not have a clear process for tracking maintenance. Now the problem is not the machine but the lack of a system. Fixing the system prevents future failures. Imagine a student failing an exam. The first answer is, I didn't study enough. Ask why. I ran out of time. Why? I left assignments until the last minute. Why? I underestimated how long they would take. Why? I don't plan my schedule realistically. The root cause is poor planning, not lack of intelligence or effort. Addressing planning habits fixes more than one missed exam. Each step digs deeper, moving from surface issues to underlying systems or behaviors. It shifts the focus from blaming individuals to examining processes. In business, this reduces repeated mistakes. In personal life, it exposes habits that block progress. The number 5 is not strict. Sometimes 3 questions reveal enough, and other times you need more. What matters is persistence in asking why until the answer identifies something you can control and improve. By pushing past quick explanations, you avoid patchwork fixes and uncover the true drivers of problems. The 5 whys create clarity, guide effective action, and ensure solutions last. Sleeping on a tough problem often produces better answers than forcing yourself to push through. When you step away and rest, your brain continues to process information in the background. During sleep, memory consolidates and connections form that you may not notice while awake. This offline work can reveal insights, solutions, or perspectives that were hidden before. Think of a scientist struggling with a formula. Hours of work at the desk may produce no breakthrough. Frustration grows, and focus declines. After a night of rest, the scientist wakes with a new idea about rearranging variables. What seemed stuck the day before becomes clear. The brain has been sorting and connecting pieces in sleep, creating a fresh path forward. Writers often use this approach. A stuck draft can feel immovable. Instead of rewriting the same sentences endlessly, walking away and returning after sleep often produces clarity. The next morning, errors stand out, and better phrasing emerges. The brain, free from conscious pressure, has reorganized ideas and sharpened the message. Even in everyday work, the effect is clear. Imagine preparing for a presentation. Late-night rehearsals may blur the slides and weaken delivery. Sleeping and reviewing in the morning often improves recall and confidence. The offline work of the brain strengthens memory and refines details without deliberate effort. This method works because of how the brain cycles through different stages of sleep. Deep sleep strengthens memory, while REM sleep enhances connections and creativity. Together, these processes build solutions and uncover links you might not reach in waking focus. By resting, you create conditions for the brain to continue problem solving. The key is to trust the process. Stepping back can feel like avoiding the problem, but it is an active choice. Giving your brain time to process ensures higher quality results than forcing a tired mind to keep working. In practice, sleeping on tough problems reduces errors, increases creativity, and brings clarity. Often the best ideas arrive not while staring at the problem, but after letting the brain work offline overnight. Mental models are tools for thinking. They simplify complex situations and help you make better decisions. Instead of reacting blindly, you use a framework to understand what is happening and what matters most. Two useful models are the Pareto principle and opportunity cost. The Pareto principle states that 80% of results often come from 20% of inputs. In business, this might mean that a small group of customers drives most revenue, or a few product features create the most value. Applying this model forces you to focus on what actually moves the needle. For example, a manager with a long list of projects might realize only 2 of them deliver most of the impact. By concentrating resources there, the team achieves far more than spreading effort evenly. The model highlights imbalance and clarifies priorities. Opportunity cost is another essential model. Every choice carries the cost of the best alternative you gave up. Spending 2 hours in one meeting means you cannot use that time for another task. Using money on a new gadget means you cannot invest it elsewhere. This model pushes you to weigh not just what you gain, but also what you lose. For instance, a student deciding between part-time work and extra study hours must consider both income earned and knowledge missed. Seeing the trade-off clearly improves the quality of the decision. These models also work together. Suppose an entrepreneur is deciding how to allocate limited funds. By applying the Pareto principle, they identify the top customers who generate most revenue. Then, by applying opportunity cost, they consider whether to invest in serving those customers better or expanding to new ones. The combination of models turns vague choices into structured analysis. Mental models are not rules but lenses. Each one highlights a different aspect of reality. The more models you collect, the more perspectives you can use. A decision framed through multiple models is less likely to be distorted by bias. They guide you to ask better questions, focus on leverage points, and avoid waste. Thinking with mental models turns abstract problems into manageable ones and builds the habit of reasoning from clear, tested principles. Asking "what would role model do?" creates distance between your emotions and the decision you face. When problems feel personal, judgment gets clouded. Stress, fear, or ego can push you toward poor choices. By stepping into the perspective of someone you admire, you borrow their clarity and standards. The question turns abstract ideals into concrete guidance. Consider a young entrepreneur unsure whether to take on a risky project. Fear of failure might hold them back. By asking, "What would Elon Musk do?" or "What would a disciplined mentor do?" they frame the decision differently. They recognize that a role model might weigh long-term impact over short-term comfort. That perspective often reveals options that hesitation alone hides. The process does not mean copying every action of the role model, but using their example as a filter. This works in daily life as well. Imagine feeling frustrated during an argument with a colleague. Left unchecked, emotion could lead to harsh words. Asking, "What would a calm leader I respect do here?" can guide you toward patience, listening, and measured response. The role model acts as a standard for behavior, reducing the influence of anger in the moment. The question also helps when goals feel overwhelming. A student preparing for a major exam might feel tempted to procrastinate. By asking, "What would a disciplined scholar do?" the answer becomes obvious. Follow a study schedule, review weak areas, and stay consistent. The imagined response provides a practical model for action. Even in creative fields, the technique works. A writer stuck with a draft might ask, "What would Hemingway do?" and realize the answer is to strip away excess words and return to clarity. The role model lens simplifies the choice by focusing on principles that person is known for. Asking this question is a way of stepping outside yourself. It allows you to detach from impulse and look at the problem with borrowed wisdom. You align your actions with values you respect. The practice transforms uncertainty into guidance and reminds you that decisions improve when viewed through the perspective of someone you hold as an example. Endless debate stalls progress. People argue about the best option, weighing theories without evidence, and time slips away. Running small experiments breaks this cycle. Instead of guessing, you test ideas on a limited scale, gather data, and let results guide the decision. This approach reduces risk and provides clarity faster than discussion alone. Consider a company debating whether to add a new feature to its app. Meetings stretch on as teams argue about user demand, technical cost, and potential revenue. Rather than continue the debate, they could build a simple prototype and release it to a small group of users. Feedback from that experiment would answer questions more reliably than speculation. The experiment costs less than prolonged discussion and creates real evidence for the next step. In personal life, experiments work the same way. Imagine trying to decide on a new fitness routine. Instead of spending weeks researching methods or comparing opinions online, you test one program for 2 weeks. You track energy, strength, and consistency. If it works, you continue. If not, you adjust and try again. The small test provides concrete insight, while debate only delays action. Experiments are powerful because they scale. You do not need to solve the whole problem at once. A student unsure about a career path could shadow someone in the field for a week or take a short online course. This low-cost test offers more clarity than abstract thinking about whether the job would be a good fit. Even in creative work, experiments reveal truth. A writer debating between 2 story structures could draft a short version of each and share them with a small audience. The response provides direction. The experiment requires less effort than a full draft, yet supplies more useful guidance than arguments about style. Running small experiments builds momentum. It shifts focus from theory to practice, from debating possibilities to testing realities. Each test reduces uncertainty and provides data you can trust. Over time, the habit of experimenting replaces hesitation with steady progress, proving that action, even on a small scale, outperforms endless discussion. Mirroring body language is a subtle but effective way to build rapport. People feel more comfortable when they sense alignment with others, and the body often communicates this faster than words. By matching posture, gestures, and tone in a natural way, you create a sense of familiarity that makes conversations flow more easily. Consider a job interview. If the interviewer leans forward while speaking, and you naturally mirror that by leaning forward as well, it signals engagement. If they speak with calm, measured gestures, and you match that energy, it shows respect and attentiveness. The key is not to mimic every move, but to reflect their general pace and rhythm. Done smoothly, it makes the other person feel understood without either party noticing the process directly. Mirroring also helps in negotiations. If one side crosses their arms and speaks firmly, you can subtly match their seriousness without appearing confrontational. When they relax and open their posture, shifting in the same direction helps lower tension. The physical alignment reinforces psychological alignment, encouraging cooperation in casual settings. Mirroring strengthens connection too. Imagine meeting a new colleague at a company event. If they smile often, keep eye contact, and use open gestures, following their style makes the interaction warm and easy. If they prefer smaller movements and quieter tones, mirroring creates comfort by matching their preference. People tend to trust those who feel like them, and body language plays a large role in creating that impression. Even small signals can make a difference. If someone taps their foot at a steady rhythm, matching that pace with a hand movement shows unconscious synchrony. If they sip from a glass, waiting a few moments and doing the same can create a shared rhythm. These details make the interaction smoother, even if neither person is fully aware of it. The goal is always subtlety. Obvious imitation feels forced and breaks trust, but when you mirror body language naturally, it creates harmony. Conversations become less strained, people open up more, and collaboration improves. Rapport grows from this sense of alignment, showing that connection often begins not with words but with shared physical signals. Using someone's name in conversation is a simple way to create connection and build trust. A name signals recognition. It shows you are paying attention and treating the other person as an individual rather than just another face in a crowd. People respond positively when they hear their name because it affirms identity and makes the interaction more personal. Consider a workplace scenario. A manager walking into a meeting might greet each person by name instead of offering a general hello. Saying "Good morning, Sarah," or "Glad you're here, Michael" takes little effort, but sets a tone of respect and inclusion. The meeting begins with attention on people, not just tasks. Employees feel valued and are more likely to engage. In customer service, names can change the tone of the interaction. A representative who says, "I understand your concern, Mr. Davis, let's solve this together," immediately builds rapport. The customer feels acknowledged rather than processed. Using the name transforms the conversation from transactional to personal, even if the issue itself is routine. The same principle works in social settings. At a party, when you meet someone and repeat their name, "Nice to meet you, Anna," you anchor it in memory and show genuine interest. Later, recalling and using it in conversation strengthens the bond. People often notice when others forget their name, so remembering and using it creates a small but meaningful distinction. Names can also guide attention. In group discussions, saying "James, what do you think?" invites specific contribution. It ensures people feel included and accountable. Without using names, comments can blur together, but addressing individuals keeps dialogue clear and directed. The key is balance. Overusing a name can feel forced or insincere, but using it naturally at key points, greetings, questions, affirmations, makes communication smoother. Names anchor attention, foster respect, and personalize interactions. Whether in business, education, or casual conversation, remembering and using names shows effort and builds trust. It turns exchanges into connections and leaves a lasting impression that words alone cannot achieve. Pausing after asking a question is a powerful but often overlooked skill. Many people rush to fill silence, either by rephrasing the question or answering it themselves. This habit weakens the impact of the question and prevents the other person from thinking deeply. Allowing silence gives space for reflection and signals that you expect a thoughtful response. Imagine a manager asking a team member, "What do you think is the biggest risk in this project?" If the manager jumps in after 2 seconds to suggest possible answers, the employee might agree without sharing their own view. But if the manager pauses, even for 10 or 15 seconds, the employee has time to think. The eventual answer is likely more honest and detailed. The pause communicates that their input matters and that the question deserves careful thought. Teachers use this principle effectively. In a classroom, when a teacher asks, "Why does gravity affect objects the same way regardless of mass?" students may hesitate. If the teacher fills the silence too quickly, students lose the chance to engage. By holding the pause, students wrestle with the idea, and one eventually offers an answer. The pause encourages active learning instead of passive listening. In conversations outside of work or study, pausing has similar power. If a friend is upset and you ask, "What's on your mind?" immediate silence after the question allows them to gather their thoughts. They may share more deeply because they do not feel rushed. The pause gives weight to the question and shows genuine interest. Even in negotiations, silence after a question can shift dynamics. Asking, "What's the best you can offer?" and then remaining quiet puts gentle pressure on the other side. The pause signals patience and confidence, prompting them to fill the gap with more information or concessions. The key is resisting the urge to speak too soon. A pause is not awkwardness but space. It tells the other person their response is worth waiting for. By using silence intentionally, you turn questions into opportunities for insight, honesty, and connection. The pause often carries more influence than the question itself. The word "but" often creates tension in conversation. It signals contrast and can make the first part of a sentence feel dismissed. When someone hears "but," they often brace for criticism or rejection. Replacing it with "and" changes the tone. "And" connects ideas rather than opposing them, which reduces defensiveness and keeps dialogue cooperative. Consider a workplace example. A manager might say, "You did a great job on the report, but you need to fix the formatting." The compliment is overshadowed by the correction. The employee hears only the second part and may feel unappreciated. If the manager instead says, "You did a great job on the report, and you need to fix the formatting." The praise remains intact while the correction is added naturally. The task still needs attention, but the message feels supportive rather than critical. In personal relationships, the difference is just as clear. Imagine saying to a partner, "I enjoy spending time with you, but I need more space." The "but" suggests enjoyment is less important. If you say, "I enjoy spending time with you, and I need more space," both truths stand together. The conversation becomes about balance rather than contradiction. This shift is subtle but powerful. Using "and" acknowledges complexity without negating what came before. In team discussions, for instance, someone might propose an idea you see flaws in. Saying, "That's a good start, but it won't work because of cost," shuts them down. Saying, "That's a good start, and we need to think about the cost," invites collaboration. The idea is still questioned, but the person feels included rather than dismissed. Even in self-talk, the habit matters. Saying, "I want to exercise, but I'm tired," creates conflict and often leads to inaction. Saying, "I want to exercise, and I'm tired," acknowledges both realities. This framing opens space for compromise, like choosing a lighter workout instead of skipping it. Replacing "but" with "and" does not remove honesty, it changes how honesty lands. It keeps dialogue constructive, reduces resistance, and encourages solutions. The shift creates a tone where ideas and people are respected, making communication smoother and more effective. Smiling while talking on the phone changes how your voice sounds. Even though the person on the other end cannot see you, they can hear the difference. A smile lifts the tone of your voice, making it warmer, friendlier, and more approachable. The effect is subtle but noticeable, and it influences how people respond to you. Consider a customer service call. If the representative speaks with a flat tone, the caller may feel unwelcome or even frustrated, regardless of the actual words. If the representative smiles while speaking, the caller hears a tone that suggests patience and willingness to help. The interaction becomes smoother, and the chance of resolving the issue improves. The physical act of smiling carries over into vocal expression. In professional networking, the same principle applies. Imagine calling a potential client. Reading from a script without expression makes the call sound mechanical. Smiling while delivering the same words brings energy and authenticity. The client feels more comfortable, and the conversation builds rapport faster. The smile works as a silent signal of openness. Even personal conversations benefit. When speaking with friends or family, smiling while talking creates a sense of warmth and care. The person on the other end may not know why the conversation feels more positive, but they sense the emotional difference. Smiling changes not only how you sound, but also how you feel, which influences the quality of the exchange. This technique works because body and mind are connected. Smiling releases tension and reduces stress, which carries into your tone. Your words sound less rushed, more patient, and more confident. For example, if you are nervous before making an important call, smiling before and during the call can calm your nerves. The act shifts your mood and sets the stage for a more effective conversation. Smiling on the phone is not about pretending or forcing cheerfulness. It is about creating an environment where your tone reflects approachability and confidence. The listener responds to that energy, even unconsciously. A small physical change leads to clearer, friendlier communication, which often makes the outcome of the call more successful. Summarizing another person's point before responding shows that you listened and understood. It prevents miscommunication and reduces tension, especially in discussions where opinions differ. By restating their view in your own words, you confirm clarity before adding your perspective. This practice makes dialogue more productive and respectful. Consider a workplace meeting where two colleagues disagree about project priorities. One argues that meeting deadlines is most important, while the other insists quality should come first. Instead of jumping straight into counter-arguments, the first colleague might say, "So what I hear you saying is that if we cut corners to meet the deadline, we risk damaging the long-term reputation of the product." By summarizing, they show they grasp the concern. Only then do they add, "I agree quality matters, and I also worry about the cost of delays." This exchange builds common ground and prevents defensiveness. In personal relationships, the effect is just as clear. Imagine a partner saying, "You never make time for dinner together." A defensive response often follows, which leads to conflict. Instead, if you begin with, "You feel I don't prioritize spending time with you in the evenings," it shows you understood the feeling behind the words. After confirming, you can explain your perspective or propose solutions. The conversation shifts from accusation and defense to mutual understanding. Summarizing also helps in learning. In class discussions, a student who restates a peer's argument before responding not only shows respect, but also sharpens their own comprehension. This habit forces active listening. You cannot summarize clearly without paying attention, so it disciplines the mind to focus on what is said rather than preparing a rebuttal. Even in negotiations, summarizing proves useful. A buyer might say, "You're concerned that lowering the price will reduce your profit margin." This confirmation reassures the seller that their concerns are acknowledged, opening space for compromise. The act of summarizing becomes a tool for building trust. By summarizing first, you slow the pace of reaction and shift the focus from winning an argument to understanding. The result is clearer communication, stronger rapport, and more constructive outcome. Silence is a powerful tool in conversation. Many people are uncomfortable with it and rush to fill the gap. When you stay quiet, others often reveal more than they planned. They expand on their thoughts, share details, and sometimes expose the truth behind their first answer. Using silence well requires patience and confidence, but it can change the depth and honesty of dialogue. In negotiations, silence often works better than pressing for answers. Imagine asking a supplier for their best price. If you stay silent after they respond, they may feel the need to justify their number or offer a discount to break the pause. The silence creates space for them to reveal information they might otherwise keep back. It is not aggression, but a calm presence that nudges the other person to speak. In personal conversations, silence shows listening. Suppose a friend tells you about a difficult situation at work. Instead of rushing to give advice or change the subject, you allow a pause. The quiet gives them room to keep talking, often moving from surface complaints to deeper feelings. They may say, "It's not just the workload, it's that I feel unappreciated." That truth surfaces because the silence invited it. Even in interviews, silence works both ways. If an interviewer asks a candidate about a challenge they faced and waits, the candidate will usually elaborate beyond their prepared answer. The same applies when you are the interviewee. Pausing before answering a question shows thoughtfulness, and sometimes the interviewer fills the silence with clarifications that help you respond more effectively. Silence also strengthens authority. Leaders who do not rush to speak after asking a question signal confidence. The team learns that silence is not a void, but a space for contribution. People begin to step in, offering ideas or concerns they might have held back. Using silence is not about manipulation, it is about creating room for honesty. When words are not forced, people often reveal what matters most. The pause becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, truth often appears. Open-ended questions invite deeper answers because they cannot be solved with a simple yes or no. Asking how or what encourages explanation, reflection, and detail. These questions create space for dialogue, and they show genuine interest in the other person's perspective. They are useful in conversations, negotiations, teaching, and even self-reflection. Consider a manager speaking with a team member. Asking, "Did you finish the task?" gives only a short response. Asking, "What challenges did you face in completing the task?" produces a richer answer. The employee might explain where processes broke down or where support is needed. The manager gains insight that helps improve the workflow. The same principle applies to feedback. Instead of, "Do you like this design?" ask, "What do you like about this design, and what would you change?" The second question encourages constructive input. In personal relationships, open-ended questions deepen connection. If you ask a partner, "Did you have a good day?" the likely reply is yes or no. If you ask, "What was the best part of your day?" you invite them to share experiences and feelings. The conversation becomes more meaningful. Similarly, with friends, "How did that make you feel?" opens space for honesty that a closed question cannot reach. In negotiations or sales, open-ended questions reveal motivations. A buyer asking a vendor, "What matters most to you in this deal?" gains information about priorities. This knowledge allows both sides to find solutions that satisfy core needs. Closed questions restrict dialogue, while open-ended ones uncover context. Even in self-reflection, the technique works. Asking yourself, "What is blocking me from finishing this project?" or "How can I make this task easier?" creates solutions. A closed question, like "Am I productive?" offers no path forward. Open-ended questions push conversations past surface level. They show respect because they ask for more than a minimal reply. They encourage people to think, explain, and share, which builds trust and understanding. By replacing closed questions with how and what, you turn simple exchanges into meaningful dialogue that uncovers truth and fosters stronger connections. Facts deliver information, but stories make people care. A fact sits on the surface, while a story carries emotion, context, and meaning. When you tell a story, you connect facts into something people can imagine and remember. Stories turn abstract points into concrete experiences, and that makes them powerful in teaching, persuading, or simply sharing ideas. Consider a presentation at work. You could say, "Customer satisfaction rose 15% this year." The number is useful but dry. Instead, you could tell the story of a single customer who had a problem, reached out, and was surprised by how quickly the team solved it. That customer then left a positive review that reflected the wider trend. The story contains the same fact, but wrapped in an example people can relate to. It anchors the number in real life. Teachers use stories to explain complex ideas. A science teacher might state that gravity pulls objects toward the Earth at 9.8 meters per second squared. Students may forget the number, but if the teacher tells the story of Galileo dropping spheres from the Leaning Tower of Pisa, students recall the experiment and connect it to the concept. The story transforms a fact into memory. Even in casual conversation, stories build connection. Telling someone, "The trip went well," is factual. Sharing the story of missing a train, meeting strangers, and finding humor in the struggle makes the experience vivid. The listener engages, relates, and remembers. Facts may inform, but stories entertain and bind people together. Leaders also rely on stories. A manager who tells the team, "We must improve efficiency by 10%" states a fact. One who shares a story about a competitor that adapted quickly and thrived gives the team an image to follow. The story provides context for why efficiency matters. Stories work because the brain is wired for them. They create patterns, show cause and effect, and add emotion to data. A fact alone risks being forgotten. A story that carries the fact along lives longer in memory. By turning facts into stories, you not only share information, but also shape how people feel and respond. Speaking slowly signals confidence and control. When people rush their words, it often sounds like they are nervous, unprepared, or eager to finish. A slower pace shows you believe your words are worth hearing and that you expect others to follow along. It creates clarity and gives your message more weight. Think of a public speaker addressing a large audience. If they speak too quickly, listeners struggle to keep up, and the points blur together. The speaker seems unsure, even if the content is strong. Now picture the same speaker delivering the same message at a measured pace. Each sentence has room to land, and pauses give the audience time to absorb ideas. The slower rhythm projects authority, even without changing the words. In everyday settings, the effect is similar. Imagine answering a tough question in a meeting. If you rush, people may assume you lack confidence in your answer. If you take your time and speak steadily, even pausing before making key points, your response carries more credibility. The calm delivery suggests thoughtfulness and composure, which influences how others perceive the content. Slowing down also reduces mistakes. When you rush, you are more likely to stumble, backtrack, or fill space with unnecessary words. A slower pace gives your brain time to organize thoughts as you speak. This makes you clearer and more concise. For instance, in an interview, taking a breath before responding helps you avoid rambling and answer with focus. Pausing is part of speaking slowly. A short pause before a main point builds emphasis and draws attention. Lawyers in courtrooms, teachers in classrooms, and leaders in speeches all use pauses to highlight what matters most. Silence in the right place can be as powerful as words. Speaking slower also shows respect. It makes it easier for listeners to process what you say, especially if the topic is complex. People feel included rather than rushed. Over time, slowing down becomes a habit that strengthens not only how you sound, but how much impact your words carry. Confidence often lies not in saying more, but in saying it with deliberate pace. Building a new habit is easier when you attach it to something you already do. Routines act like anchors. They provide stability, timing, and structure that new behaviors can lock onto. Instead of trying to create a habit from nothing, you use an existing pattern as the foundation. This approach reduces resistance because the trigger is already part of daily life. Consider brushing your teeth. It is automatic and requires little thought. If you want to build a habit of flossing, attaching it to brushing makes success more likely. You don't need to remember a separate time or place. The act of brushing becomes the cue, and flossing follows naturally. Over time, the two actions link into a single routine. The same method works for fitness. Suppose you want to start stretching. If you say, "I'll stretch sometime during the day," the habit often fails. But if you decide, "I will stretch right after my morning coffee," the anchor is clear. Drinking coffee becomes the trigger, and stretching follows. The established habit carries the new one forward until it feels automatic. Anchoring also works in professional settings. Imagine you want to review your priorities daily. Instead of adding a random reminder, you attach the review to an existing action, like opening your email each morning. Before checking messages, you glance at your task list. The familiar act of opening email becomes the signal for your new habit. This method reduces decision fatigue. You don't waste energy deciding when or how to perform the new habit. The existing routine handles the timing. For example, someone who wants to practice gratitude might write one sentence in a journal right after turning off their alarm at night. The anchor removes uncertainty and makes the behavior stick. Anchoring habits to routines works because it builds on structures already in place. You turn established actions into cues that trigger growth. Whether it's brushing, drinking coffee, commuting, or shutting down your computer, each habit you already have can serve as a foundation for a new one. The anchor keeps change simple, predictable, and sustainable. Celebrating small wins reinforces progress and keeps motivation alive. Big goals often take months or years to achieve, and without markers along the way, it is easy to lose momentum. Small wins provide evidence that effort is paying off, even if the end goal is still distant. They act as checkpoints that remind you growth is happening. Consider someone training for a marathon. Running 26 miles feels overwhelming at the start. If the runner only celebrates completing the full race, they may lose heart long before reaching it. By recognizing small wins, running their first uninterrupted 3 miles, hitting a personal best at 10 miles, or sticking to their training plan for a full week, they stay engaged. Each win provides encouragement and makes the larger goal feel attainable. The same applies to professional work. Imagine a team tasked with launching a new product. Waiting until the launch to celebrate would ignore months of effort. Instead, acknowledging milestones like completing the prototype, receiving positive feedback from a test group, or fixing a difficult bug boosts morale. The small celebrations build a sense of progress and keep the team motivated during long stretches of work. Even personal habits benefit from this approach. A person trying to build a reading habit might set a goal of finishing 50 books in a year. That target can feel daunting. Recognizing the first week of consistent reading or finishing the first book turns the effort into something rewarding. These moments fuel the desire to continue rather than making the process feel like a burden. Celebrating small wins also strengthens self-discipline. Progress often feels invisible when it happens slowly. By taking time to mark achievements, you train your brain to notice growth. For example, someone learning a new language might celebrate being able to order food confidently in that language, even if fluency is still far off. Each win builds confidence and reinforces commitment. The celebration does not need to be large. It could be a pause to reflect, a note in a journal, or sharing the success with someone supportive. What matters is recognizing progress. Small wins build momentum, and momentum carries you through challenges on the path to bigger goals. Visualization is often tied to imagining success, but focusing only on the outcome leaves gaps. Seeing yourself with the medal, the promotion, or the finished book can inspire, but it does not prepare you for the steps required to get there. Visualizing the process means rehearsing the actions, decisions, and obstacles along the way. It builds readiness, not just desire. Consider an athlete preparing for a race. If they picture only crossing the finish line first, they may feel motivated, but the image does little to help them when fatigue hits halfway through. Instead, if they visualize pacing their breathing, adjusting stride, and pushing through pain at critical points, they mentally practice the race itself. When the real moment comes, they are less surprised and more capable of executing the plan. Writers can use this as well. Someone who dreams of holding a published book might feel inspired but stuck. Visualizing the process, waking early, writing 500 words daily, revising drafts and sending queries, makes the path concrete. Each step becomes part of the mental picture, reducing intimidation and making the outcome realistic. Even in professional life, process visualization strengthens preparation. Imagine a person about to give a presentation. They could picture applause at the end, but that vision alone does not calm nerves. Instead, they can rehearse in their mind walking to the front of the room, opening with a clear introduction, pausing for effect, and handling questions. By running through the process, they reduce anxiety and improve delivery. The same principle applies to personal change. Someone trying to build a fitness habit might dream of a stronger body but fail to act. If they visualize tying their shoes, heading to the gym, starting the warm-up, and completing each set, the routine feels more natural. The brain treats imagined practice as partial experience, which lowers resistance when taking the real action. Visualizing outcomes may provide motivation, but visualizing the process provides a roadmap. It bridges the gap between intention and execution. By mentally practicing the steps, you prepare for reality, anticipate obstacles, and make progress more likely. The power of visualization lies not in fantasy, but in rehearsal of the work required. Boring tasks drain energy because they feel endless and thankless. Gamifying them changes the experience by turning work into a challenge with rules, goals, and rewards. The task itself does not change, but your engagement with it does. The brain responds to structure and progress, and a gamified task provides both. Consider cleaning the house. Without structure, it feels like drudgery. By setting a timer for 20 minutes and challenging yourself to finish one room before it runs out, the task shifts from vague and heavy to a race against the clock. Add a score by counting how many items you put away, and you create a measurable sense of progress. What was once a burden now has the feel of a game. The same applies to office work. A person with dozens of emails to answer might gamify the task by creating levels. Inbox down to 50 messages is level 1, down to 20 is level 2, and inbox 0 is the final level. Each stage provides a sense of advancement, adding small rewards at milestones. A stretch break, a snack, or stepping outside reinforces the structure and makes the grind more tolerable. Gamification works in learning as well. A student studying vocabulary might assign points to correct answers and track high scores across sessions. Competing with past performance creates motivation that simple memorization lacks. The task becomes less about repetition and more about beating the last score. Even physical chores respond to this method. Someone trying to run regularly can track miles as if leveling up a character. Reaching 10 miles in a week unlocks a reward, while improving pace counts as bonus points. This framing transforms routine exercise into a system of progress markers. Gamifying tasks relies on breaking them into smaller goals, tracking results, and attaching rewards. The brain enjoys feedback loops, and a game-like structure provides them. Tasks that once felt dull gain purpose because each step carries a challenge and a payoff. By reframing work as play, you harness natural motivation and make progress visible, even when the job itself is repetitive or tedious. Accountability partners make goals more achievable because they add structure and social pressure. When you share commitments with another person, you create an external check on your behavior. Left alone, it is easy to postpone or justify delays. With someone watching your progress, you feel a stronger push to follow through. Consider a person training for a half marathon. Running alone, they might skip a session on a cold morning. With a partner waiting at the track, skipping becomes harder. The commitment to another person outweighs the comfort of staying in bed. Each run becomes not just personal discipline but also a shared responsibility. Over time, both partners benefit from the consistent effort. In professional settings, accountability also improves performance. A writer aiming to finish a book draft may pair with another writer. They agree to exchange pages weekly. The pressure of knowing someone expects to see progress helps overcome procrastination. Even if the pages are rough, the act of delivering them keeps the project moving. The partner serves as both motivator and witness. The same works with habit building. Imagine someone trying to practice meditation daily. Telling a friend about the goal and checking in each evening adds weight to the commitment. Missing a session becomes noticeable. Success is shared, and the friend's encouragement strengthens consistency. What could fade in private gains momentum in partnership. Accountability does not require equal goals. A student preparing for exams might partner with a friend focused on fitness. They meet to review progress even though the goals differ. The structure of reporting back creates discipline in both areas. The act of saying, "I did what I said I would do," reinforces follow-through, regardless of the task. Technology adds another layer. Apps and groups make it easy to log progress and share updates. Still, the principle remains the same. The presence of another person, whether in person or virtual, creates accountability. By making your effort visible, you strengthen resolve. Accountability partners transform intentions into actions by tying personal goals to social commitment, making consistency far more likely. Motivational triggers are cues that lift energy and focus when willpower alone is not enough. They can be as simple as a line of text, a favorite song, or an object that carries meaning. The purpose is not to rely on constant inspiration, but to create reliable sparks that help you start when resistance feels strongest. Consider someone facing a long workout after a draining day. The body feels heavy, and the temptation to skip is strong. Turning on a specific playlist shifts mood and pace almost instantly. The music becomes a trigger that bridges the gap between intention and action. Once the first few minutes of exercise pass, momentum builds, and the workout continues. The song did not supply discipline, but it unlocked it. In work settings, quotes can serve as triggers. A programmer stuck on a difficult problem might keep a note on the desk that reads, "Obstacles are things you see when you take your eyes off the goal." Reading it does not solve the bug, but it resets perspective. The reminder cuts through frustration and renews effort. The physical presence of the trigger changes the mental state. Triggers can be personalized. A student preparing for exams might keep a small object, like a keychain from a mentor, as a symbol of encouragement. Each time focus drifts, seeing the item brings attention back to the task. The object becomes a cue that carries meaning deeper than simple willpower. Even routines can become triggers. Drinking coffee at a certain desk with a specific notebook may signal the brain it is time to write. Over time, the ritual itself becomes motivational. The smell, the setting, and the act combine into a cue that prepares the mind for work. The effectiveness of motivational triggers lies in consistency. When the same song, phrase, or ritual is tied to effort repeatedly, the brain begins to associate the trigger with performance. What begins as an external push becomes an automatic signal. In moments when drive feels low, these triggers provide the spark that gets action started, turning hesitation into movement, and sustaining progress when discipline feels thin. Tracking streaks is a simple way to keep motivation strong. A streak shows consistency in visible form, and once you build it, you feel a natural urge to protect it. Each day added makes the chain longer, and breaking it feels like a loss. The streak itself becomes a source of momentum, pushing you forward even when energy is low. Consider someone trying to build a writing habit. They decide to write at least 300 words each day. After 1 week, the streak is 7 days long. Seeing that chain grow gives satisfaction, and by day 20, skipping feels harder because it would erase the record. The words produced each day matter, but the streak also becomes its own reward. The visual record fuels discipline. Fitness goals benefit from streaks as well. A runner marking every day they jog on a calendar builds momentum. After 10 runs in a row, missing one feels like dropping the chain. The streak shifts the focus from each workout's difficulty to the larger story of consistency. Even when motivation dips, the thought of keeping the streak alive provides enough push to start. Apps and journals make streak tracking easier. Language learners often log daily practice sessions. A 30-day streak of studying vocabulary carries pride and proof of progress. The streak motivates continued effort, even when lessons feel repetitive. The accumulation creates momentum that single sessions lack. Streaks also reduce the weight of perfection. Missing one day can feel like failure, but if you frame the goal as building streaks, you focus on the long run. A broken streak resets the count, but does not erase past effort. The record shows that you can build again. The act of restarting quickly matters more than the break itself. Momentum from streaks grows because progress becomes visible. Each mark on the calendar, each logged session, each checked box is evidence of commitment. The habit transforms into identity. You become the kind of person who keeps the streak alive. That identity makes future effort easier. Tracking streaks turns repetition into achievement, and achievement sustains motivation. People naturally choose the path of least resistance. If something is easy to do, it happens more often. If it requires friction, it often gets postponed or avoided. By shaping your environment so the easier choice supports your goals, you remove the need to rely only on willpower. The setup does much of the work for you. Consider eating habits. If snacks and sweets are always in reach while healthy food is hidden away, the default choice becomes unhealthy. Rearranging the environment changes the odds. Keeping fruit on the counter and moving chips to a high shelf makes the better option the easier one. You do not need more discipline. You need fewer barriers to the behavior you want. The same applies to exercise. If going to the gym requires a 20-minute drive and packing a bag, excuses are easy to find. By setting up a small workout space at home with a mat and weights in plain sight, the friction drops, the effort shifts from preparation to action, and the path of least resistance becomes aligned with the fitness goal. Work routines also benefit from this principle. Imagine trying to write every morning but leaving your desk cluttered and your tools scattered. Each small barrier delays the start. Instead, if you close each day by clearing the desk and leaving a notebook open, the next morning begins smoothly. The environment makes starting easier than avoiding. Technology offers another example. Distractions like social media thrive because they are only a tap away. To align goals with the easier path, you can log out after each use or place distracting apps in folders, adding friction. At the same time, keeping tools for learning or productivity on the home screen lowers resistance to better habits. This principle shows that design often matters more than discipline. By lowering barriers to good choices and raising barriers to poor ones, you guide behavior without constant internal struggle. The easier action wins most of the time, so aligning that ease with your goals ensures progress. The path of least resistance becomes the path forward. Changing your environment is a fast way to break a stall. When you stay in the same setting, your brain loops through the same cues and the same habits. If you feel stuck, move, shift rooms, change posture, or switch tools. New sights, sounds, and light patterns refresh attention and open different paths. Think about a writer who stares at a blank screen. At the desk, the cursor feels immovable. The writer grabs a notebook and walks to a park bench. With pen in hand and traffic in the background, sentences start to form. The task did not change, the context did. The new setting breaks the mental rut. A software engineer hits a stubborn bug. Hours at the same monitor yield nothing. They print the function, go to a whiteboard, and trace the logic by hand. Standing changes, focus, and pace. The flaw shows itself because the environment invites a new approach. Students can use this too. If a concept will not stick, switch locations or formats. Read at a library table, teach the idea out loud in an empty room, or sketch diagrams on paper. Memory often ties to place. When the place shifts, recall improves. Teams benefit from a change as well. A stale meeting in a windowless room drains energy. Hold a stand-up in a brighter space or walk outside. Shorter, focused discussion follows because the environment signals a different rhythm. Design your space to make change easy. Keep a backpack ready with a notebook, pens, and headphones. Maintain a second work zone at home. A clean table by a window or a chair with a lap desk. Create options so you can pivot in minutes. Use sensory switches. Adjust lighting, open a window, or put on noise-blocking headphones. Lower the thermostat a degree. Small shifts tell the brain that it is time to reset. When stuck, move your body and move your view. Treat the environment as a tool, not a backdrop. The change costs little and often returns momentum you could not find by effort alone. Try it today and notice the difference yourself. Reward effort, not just results. Results matter, and they arrive after effort. If you celebrate the finish line, you starve the engine that gets you there. Effort is the engine. It turns plans into progress and progress into outcomes. When effort earns respect, people keep showing up. A sales team learns this in practice. One rep closes a big deal. Another makes 50 quality calls, logs clear notes, and books 5 demos. If praise lands on the closed deal, the team chases luck. If praise lands on the behaviors that lead to deals, the pipeline stays healthy. Reward the research, the outreach, the follow-ups, and the clean handoff. Results rise as a byproduct. Coaches use this on the field. A striker misses the shot but makes the right run, finds space, and times the move. The coach highlights the run. The player repeats the pattern and the goals come. Praise the repeatable input, not the rare highlight. In engineering, reward the work that reduces risk. Tests written, docs updated, reviews done with care, and post-mortems that name causes. These acts prevent outages. If glory goes to the quick fix, you train firefighters, not builders. Teachers see the same truth. A student who studies with a plan, asks hard questions, and revises work shows strong effort. Praise the plan and the grit. Scores improve as a result. The student learns control sits in process, not in fate. For personal change, tie rewards to reps, not a number on a scale. Celebrate meal prep for a week, 3 workouts, or 10 minutes of meditation each day. The scale may stall. The process still builds health. Musicians do this. Applaud metronome, time and clean reps. Mastery grows from logged practice. Make it concrete. Track input metrics, next to output metrics. Count drafts written, user interviews run, reps completed, tickets closed with tests. Give small rewards for streaks and for hard problems tackled. During retros, ask which behaviors moved us forward. Name them, promote them. Rewarding effort builds a culture that learns, adapts, and persists. Results follow cultures like that over the long term. Listening builds understanding. Convincing tries to win. When you push to win, the other person defends their view and closes off. When you listen, they open up. You learn needs, limits, and goals. That knowledge changes the path of the talk and the result. In a sales call, stop pitching, ask open questions. Let the buyer tell the story of their current setup, failures, and hopes. Reflect what you hear. Say, I hear uptime matters more than new features. Now you have a clear target. Your next step is simple. Show how you meet that need or admit you do not. Trust grows either way. Managers face the same choice. A team member resists a deadline. You can push harder, or you can ask, what is in the way? Then wait. The pause brings truth to the surface. Unclear scope, missing assets, or a hidden risk. You address the block and the work moves. In conflict, listening lowers heat. 2 partners argue about money. Each tries to convert the other. They loop. One stops and names the fear they hear. You want a buffer so we feel safe. The other nods. Now both can work on a plan that fits the fear and the goal. Doctors who listen get better data. A patient's first story is not complete. Space and simple prompts reveal key facts. Treatment improves because the picture is clear. Listening helps you as well. You test your own view against facts from the other side. You spot where your model fails. You change or hold your line with purpose, not pride. Make it a habit. Ask, listen, and summarize. Confirm what you heard, only then offer a path or a pitch. The shift from pushing to hearing moves, talks from debate to design. People feel seen, and seen people move with you. Interviews reward listening. Candidates reveal fit when you explore their choices, not their slogans. Ask, what trade-off did you face on that project? Sit with the pause, let them unpack context, options, and outcomes. You hire better because you hear judgment, not a scripted line. Give compliments freely. A good compliment recognizes effort, skill, or character with clear words. It shows that you noticed and that you care about the person's work or presence. Praise builds trust, improves mood, and encourages the behavior you want to see again. It costs little and returns a lot. Make compliments specific. Great job fades fast. You explain the trade-offs between options in 2 minutes, and that helped the team decide. Sticks tie the compliment to an observable action and its impact. Name the moment, the behavior, and the result. Aim praise at effort and craft, not luck. In sales, say, you prepared a sharp brief and asked strong discovery questions. In engineering, say, your tests caught a hidden edge case. In support, say, You kept the customer calm and solved the root issue. You reward practice and judgment, not chance. Be timely, give the compliment soon after the event. Momentum grows when people hear what worked while it is fresh. Public praise can set a standard. Private praise can protect dignity. Pick the setting that helps the person most. Use compliments to teach. Pair a clear positive with light feed forward. Your slide order told a clean story, and moving the metrics first will raise impact. The positive anchors attention. The small nudge guides growth. Bring this to daily life. Tell a partner, dinner tasted rich and balanced. Tell a friend, your message this morning lifted my mood. Tell a child, you kept trying after the first attempt failed. These moments shape identity. Watch tone. Speak in plain language. Keep your face and posture open. A sincere line beats flowery words. Do not wrap praise in a but. If you must add a note, use and. Make it a habit. Add one sincere compliment to each meeting. End one email each day with a specific thank you. Keep a notes file to track wins you see. The more you notice, the easier it becomes to say what you see. Steady praise shifts culture. People share credit, speak up, try bold ideas, and take care with the quality of work. Finding common ground quickly sets the stage for cooperation. People relax when they see overlap in values, goals, or experiences. It shifts the focus from differences to shared purpose. When you highlight what connects you, the rest of the conversation becomes easier to manage. Consider a negotiation. Two sides enter with opposing numbers. If they start by hammering differences, tension rises. If one side says, "We both want a deal that lasts and supports growth," they create alignment. The details still need work, but the frame changes. The talk becomes about how to reach a shared outcome rather than how to defeat the other side. In workplace conflict, common ground lowers defenses. Imagine two team members arguing about process speed versus quality. One says, "I care about deadlines." The other says, "I care about accuracy." The fight loops until one adds, "We both want the client to trust us." That shared ground makes compromise possible. They can now design a process that protects trust through both timeliness and reliability. Social situations offer the same lesson. Meeting someone new at an event, small talk can feel stiff. Finding even a small overlap, growing up near the same city, following the same sport, or liking the same type of food, creates an instant bridge. Once rapport is built, deeper topics come easier. Even in teaching, common ground matters. A math teacher connecting algebra to sports stats or music rhythms shows students that the subject is not foreign. Shared context reduces resistance and sparks curiosity. The key is speed. The sooner you find the overlap, the faster trust builds. You do not need a major connection. Even a minor one works. Saying, "I see you value preparation, and so do I," sets the right tone. From there, disagreements become problem-solving rather than battle. Practice by listening for signals. People drop hints about priorities and interests in their first sentences. Reflect those back. Show recognition. With this small shift, talks become smoother, conflict softens, and progress accelerates. Common ground gives both sides a place to stand, and from that place movement forward becomes possible. Offering help before asking for it builds trust and creates balance in relationships. People are more open to supporting you when they see you have already given something of value. Help does not need to be grand. Small acts of effort, knowledge, or attention often matter more than big gestures. By showing willingness to contribute first, you signal that you see the relationship as mutual rather than transactional. Imagine a workplace scenario. A colleague struggles with a data set while you have experience cleaning messy spreadsheets. You step in, share a quick script, and save them hours. Weeks later, when you need a design review, they are eager to make time. Your offer of help laid the groundwork. If you had only reached out when you needed something, the dynamic would feel one-sided. In networking, this approach separates genuine connection from opportunism. Many people reach out to contacts only when they want a job lead or introduction. Instead, if you begin by sharing an article relevant to their work, offering feedback on a project, or connecting them with someone who can help. You stand out. Later, if you ask for advice or a favor, it comes across as natural rather than self-serving. The same principle works in personal life. A neighbor may need help moving a heavy box. Offering to lend a hand without being asked builds goodwill. When you later need someone to collect your mail during a trip, they respond without hesitation. Reciprocity grows when help flows freely in both directions. Even in mentorship, offering help has value. A junior employee can support a senior colleague by sharing new tools, fresh research, or insight into emerging trends. Contribution is not limited to hierarchy. Everyone has something to give. The practice requires attention. You must listen and notice where others face friction. Often, the chance to help is small but meaningful. Answering a question, proofreading a document, or covering a short task. Over time, these acts establish you as dependable. Then, when you do ask for support, it feels like part of an ongoing exchange, not a sudden demand. Offering first creates a foundation for lasting cooperation. Reciprocity works because people feel a natural pull to return what they receive. When you give first time, attention, or resources, you create goodwill that makes others more willing to help when you ask. The act does not need to be large. What matters is that it shows genuine effort and regard for the other person. Picture a colleague buried in tasks. You step in and take one item off their plate, maybe proofreading a report or handling a routine email chain. Weeks later, when you need extra hands on your own project, that colleague remembers your help. Saying yes feels easy because they are not just doing you a favor, they are closing the loop of support. In business, reciprocity shows up in subtle ways. A consultant may offer a short piece of free advice or a useful template before pitching full services. The prospect, having received value, is more inclined to listen or consider working together. The principle is not manipulation, it is rooted in fairness. People prefer balanced exchanges to one-sided requests. Even small gestures count. Sharing notes after a meeting, introducing a contact to someone who can help them, or sending a resource tied to their interest builds a bank of goodwill. Later, if you need input or backing, the person feels a natural urge to reciprocate. In personal life, reciprocity strengthens ties. A neighbor lends tools without being asked. The next time you see them, you bring over fresh coffee or help shovel their driveway. No one keeps strict score, but the flow of giving and returning keeps relationships healthy. This principle can also motivate teams. A leader who takes time to support the group, staying late to help finish a task, or sharing credit publicly, creates loyalty. When that leader later asks for extra effort, the team gives it willingly. The key is sincerity. Giving only to trigger return favors feels false and can erode trust. But giving freely with awareness that reciprocity is part of human nature creates a cycle of cooperation. You offer first without demand, and when the moment comes to ask, you find people already prepared to respond. When making requests, framing them as benefits to others changes how they are received. People are more willing to say yes when they see how the action helps them, their goals, or their values. A request framed only around your own need sounds one-sided. A request that highlights mutual gain sounds reasonable and fair. Consider a manager asking a senior engineer to mentor a junior colleague. If the request is framed as, "I need you to take on this extra responsibility," it feels like added burden. If it is framed as, "This is a chance to strengthen the team and free you from repetitive questions," while also building your leadership skills, the request ties directly to benefits the engineer can appreciate. The work is the same, but the framing changes motivation. The same principle applies in sales. A salesperson might ask a client to switch systems, saying, "We'd like you to adopt our platform," centers the seller's desire. Reframing it as, "This system will cut your processing time in half and reduce error rates for your staff," makes the request about the client's benefit. The action aligns with their interest, not just the seller's quota. Even in personal relationships, the framing matters. Asking a partner, "Can you do the dishes because I'm tired?" centers your fatigue. Saying, "If you handle the dishes tonight, we can both relax earlier and spend more time together," frames the request as a shared benefit. The act is the same, but the motivation feels more balanced. Teachers use this method with students. Instead of saying, "Do the assignment because it's required," they can say, "Completing this assignment will give you practice on the type of problem that appears on exams." The request shifts from compliance to personal benefit. This approach is not about trickery. It is about aligning your needs with the other person's perspective. People naturally ask, "What's in it for me?" When you answer that question within your request, resistance drops. The more clearly you link the action to their goals, the more willing they become to follow through. Framing requests as benefits builds cooperation instead of obligation. Admitting mistakes quickly shows strength, not weakness. People respect honesty more than excuses. When you own an error right away, you show that your priority is solving the problem, not protecting your image. Trust grows because others see you value truth over saving face. Consider a workplace example. A project manager realizes they sent the wrong version of a file to a client. Instead of waiting, hoping the client does not notice, they email within minutes. "I sent the incorrect file earlier. Here is the right version, and I apologize for the confusion." The issue ends there. The client may even trust them more because of the swift correction. Compare that to silence or deflection, which usually makes small mistakes grow into larger problems. In leadership, quick admission sets the tone for the team. A manager might misjudge a deadline and underestimate the workload. If they say in a meeting, "I miscalculated the timeline, that's on me, let's rework the schedule together," the team sees transparency and feels safe to speak up about their own struggles. The culture shifts toward honesty instead of blame. In personal relationships, the same rule applies. If you forget a commitment, admitting it fast prevents resentment. Telling a friend, "I completely forgot our call, and I should have set a reminder. I'm sorry," is better than making excuses about being too busy. The mistake is already there. Owning it repairs trust before it erodes. Speed matters. The longer you wait to admit a mistake, the harder it becomes to fix. Delays allow doubt and frustration to grow. Early admission keeps the focus on resolution rather than fault. It also prevents wasted time spent covering tracks. Mistakes are unavoidable. How you handle them is the measure people remember. A doctor who calls a patient to explain a missed step in paperwork builds more trust than one who avoids contact. A teacher who says, "I marked that wrong by mistake, you earned full credit," builds respect instead of doubt. Admitting mistakes fast creates credibility. It proves reliability, because people know they will hear the truth from you even when it is uncomfortable. That reliability forms the foundation of lasting trust. Remembering small details about people shows that you listen and that you care. Most people talk, but few truly pay attention. When you recall a detail later, a favorite food, a child's name, or an upcoming event, you signal respect. That signal deepens trust faster than grand gestures because it proves you were present in the earlier conversation. Picture a manager who knows a team member's daughter is applying to college. Weeks later, the manager asks, "How did your daughter's interview at Yale go?" The employee feels seen, not just as a worker but as a person. The detail costs nothing to remember, yet it strengthens loyalty. Without it, conversations remain shallow and the bond stays transactional. In sales or client work, small details set you apart. A client once mentions they love cycling. Months later, you ask how their last ride went. You are no longer just another vendor, you are someone who remembers. That simple detail builds rapport faster than rehearsed pitches. Clients often choose partners who listen over those who only sell. In friendships, remembering small things prevents drift. A friend tells you they have a big presentation coming up. You text the morning of it to wish them luck. That act is not about the presentation, it is about remembering what matters to them. Over time, these gestures build trust and closeness. Even in casual settings, details matter. Meeting someone new, if you remember their dog's name or the city they grew up in, you create instant connection at the next encounter. Forgetting may not offend them, but remembering makes them feel valued. Technology can help. Many people jot notes after conversations, not as a trick but as a tool to support real memory. Keeping a record of birthdays, milestones, or personal preferences allows you to follow up naturally. The key is sincerity, using the detail to connect, not manipulate. When you recall what others share, you reinforce that their words had weight. You show you see them as more than a role or function. Small details, when remembered and acknowledged, compound into trust and respect that no formal speech can buy. Adding "because" when you make a request increases the chance that people say yes. The word signals a reason, and people respond better when they understand why something matters. Even a simple explanation shifts a request from arbitrary to purposeful. Without it, the ask feels like an order. With it, the ask feels like part of a shared goal. Consider a workplace example. If a manager says, "Can you update the report today?" the employee may see it as just another task in a crowded list. If the manager says, Can you update the report today? Because the client needs numbers before tomorrow's call. The request carries context. The reason frames urgency. The employee sees the importance and is more likely to act quickly. This applies outside of work as well. A parent who says, "Please clean your room," often meets resistance. If they say, "Please clean your room because guests are coming later and we want the house to look ready," the child may not enjoy the task but understands its purpose. The reason gives weight to the request. Even in small interactions because works. A commuter asking, "Could I move ahead in line?" may face pushback. Saying, "Could I move ahead in line because my train leaves in 2 minutes?" changes the odds. The reason creates empathy, and people are more willing to allow it. Psychologists have tested this effect. In classic experiments, adding "because" followed by almost any explanation increased compliance. People look for cues that a request is justified, even if the reason is obvious. The word signals structure and fairness. The practice also improves relationships. Requests framed with reasons show respect. Instead of treating others like tools, you treat them as partners who deserve context. Saying, "Can you stay late? Because your feedback will help us avoid mistakes tomorrow," recognizes both their effort and their value. Using "because" does not guarantee agreement, but it raises clarity and cooperation. It changes an order into a joint action with purpose. When people hear why, they are more willing to help, even if the task itself is not pleasant. Showing vulnerability creates trust, because it signals honesty. When you admit uncertainty, share a weakness, or reveal a personal story, you lower your guard. That act encourages others to do the same. Instead of posturing, you build connection through openness. People relate more to imperfection than to flawless performance. In leadership, this is powerful. A manager who admits, "I misjudged the timeline and I need your input to fix it," shows accountability. The team sees them as human, not distant. That honesty fosters loyalty. Employees are more likely to speak up about risks and mistakes themselves because the leader set the tone. By contrast, a leader who hides errors creates fear and silence. In personal relationships, vulnerability deepens closeness. A friend who always appears strong and unbothered may seem admirable, but also unreachable. If that same friend admits, "I've been struggling with stress at work," the bond changes. The listener feels trusted with truth and responds with empathy. The friendship becomes more resilient because both sides can share without judgment. Even in negotiation or collaboration, vulnerability works. Imagine 2 companies trying to partner. One executive says, "We don't have expertise in this area, and that's why your team's skill matters." Instead of pretending to know it all, they highlight a gap. This candor strengthens the partnership because it clarifies roles and shows respect for the other side's strength. Public speaking offers another example. An audience connects faster when a speaker admits nerves or shares a personal failure before explaining what they learned. The story invites the audience in. They see the speaker as real, not polished to the point of distance. Vulnerability makes the message more persuasive because it feels authentic. Vulnerability does not mean oversharing or dramatizing. It means choosing moments where honesty matters more than control. A leader can say, "I don't have all the answers, but I'm committed to finding them." A partner can say, "I felt hurt by that comment," instead of hiding resentment. These small admissions build bridges. By showing a piece of yourself unguarded, you give others permission to meet you there, and in that space, real connection forms. Rehearsing worst-case scenarios mentally prepares you for pressure. Fear grows in the unknown. When you picture the worst outcome clearly, it loses some of its power. You shift from vague anxiety to specific planning. The exercise does not make disaster pleasant, but it makes you ready. Take public speaking as an example. Many fear forgetting lines or freezing on stage. If you rehearse this in your mind, you picture standing silent, heart racing, audience waiting. Then you walk through what you would do, pause, take a breath, make a light remark, glance at notes and continue. By practicing the failure, you reduce the panic. If it happens, you know the steps to recover. Athletes use this as well. A tennis player imagines double faulting at match point. Instead of stopping the thought, they picture it fully. the crowd's reaction, the frustration, the moment of reset. They then rehearse bouncing the ball again, tightening grip, and focusing on the next serve. The worst case has already been lived in the mind, so if it comes, it feels familiar rather than paralyzing. In business, leaders face similar fears. A founder may worry about losing a big client. Running the scenario mentally, they ask what happens if revenue drops, which expenses get cut first, how much runway remains, which new prospects can fill the gap. By rehearsing collapse, they identify levers to pull. When stress hits, decisions come faster because they have already thought through the path. Personal life benefits too. A person anxious about asking someone out imagines rejection. They rehearse hearing no, feeling embarrassed, then moving on. By picturing it, they realize the pain is sharp but brief. The fear softens, and they act. The key is to stay practical, not spiral. You imagine the worst, then build the plan to meet it. This flips fear into preparation. The unknown shrinks because you have already seen it. The worst case becomes one version of the story, not a shadow over all of them. When reality plays out, whether better or worse, you are steady because you already walked the hardest path in your mind. Box breathing is a simple method to calm the mind and steady the body. The pattern is easy to remember. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold again for 4. You repeat this cycle until your breath slows and your thoughts settle. The structure creates rhythm, and rhythm brings control. Think of a soldier in training. High stress is the norm, but panic is useless. Many units teach box breathing to sharpen focus before action. The act of counting each phase keeps the mind anchored in the present. Heart rate slows, muscles loosen, and clarity returns. What looks like a small drill turns into a tool for survival and decision-making under pressure. In everyday life, the same principle applies. Picture an executive about to step on stage for a major talk. Nerves spike, hands sweat. The urge to rush grows. Instead of pacing or repeating lines frantically, they stop for a minute backstage. 4 seconds in, 4 hold, 4 out, 4 hold. After a few rounds, the body's alarm quiets. They walk out calmer, voice steadier, and pace controlled. Students can use it before exams. Fear of forgetting or failing narrows focus. By practicing box breathing at the desk, they replace racing thoughts with rhythm. The brain shifts from fight or flight to steady recall. The test does not change, but their state of mind does. Even during conflict, box breathing helps. An argument escalates, words sharpen, and regret looms. Pausing to breathe in 4s interrupts the spiral. The space created by that pause makes it possible to respond with clarity instead of raw reaction. The practice is portable. You need no tools, no space, and no audience. It works in a crowded train, at a desk, or lying awake at night. Athletes use it between plays. Nurses use it in chaotic hospitals. Parents use it when patience wears thin. Box breathing works because it restores balance between body and mind. You give the nervous system a signal that it is safe. That signal allows calm, focus, and resilience to surface. A few minutes of measured breath becomes the difference between panic and control. Writing down worries before bed clears mental clutter and makes sleep easier. The mind tends to hold on to unfinished tasks and unresolved thoughts. At night, when distractions fade, those thoughts grow louder. By transferring them to paper, you signal to yourself that they are stored and do not need to circle in your head. The act is simple but powerful. Consider someone lying in bed, thinking about deadlines, bills, and conversations yet to happen. The brain loops the same concerns over and over. Instead of resting, the body stays alert. If that person keeps a notebook by the bed and writes, "Finish budget report, call plumber, confirm doctor's appointment," the mind loosens its grip. Nothing is solved yet, but the items are captured. The brain trusts the list more than a memory, and the loop breaks. Worries also lose intensity when named. A vague sense of stress feels heavy. When you write, "I'm worried about missing the client meeting," the concern becomes concrete. Once written, you can plan, set alarm, leave early, check slides tonight. What was a vague unease becomes a manageable step. Even if you cannot solve it tonight, you can put structure around it tomorrow. This habit works for larger anxieties too. Suppose you fear job security. Writing, "I'm scared of layoffs," brings the fear into daylight. Then you might add, "Update, resume. Reach out to 2 contacts. Save extra this month." The fear is real, but on paper, it shifts from a shadow into something you can prepare for. The act itself becomes part of a bedtime ritual. Just as brushing teeth signals the body to wind down, writing signals the mind. You take 10 minutes, list concerns, and close the notebook. The brain accepts that it can rest because the problems are not forgotten. They are simply deferred. Students, professionals, and parents all use this method. It requires no tools beyond pen and paper. By turning racing thoughts into written words, you quiet the noise. Worries become tasks, fears become plans, and the mind gains room to rest. Sleep comes easier when the weight of remembering is lifted onto the page. Stress often feels like an enemy, but it can be reframed as a form of preparation. The body reacts to challenges by raising heart rate, sharpening focus, and releasing energy. These signals are not only symptoms of panic, they are tools. By viewing stress as readiness, you shift from fear to function. Take an athlete before a big race. Their stomach tightens, palms sweat, and pulse quickens. Many interpret this as nerves holding them back. In reality, it is the body priming muscles with oxygen, heightening alertness, and preparing for fast response. When the runner sees stress as a signal of readiness, those same feelings fuel performance rather than hinder it. Public speaking shows the same pattern. A person about to address a crowd feels their voice tremble and hands shake. If they think, "I'm falling apart," the fear multiplies. If they reframe it as, "My body is gearing up to perform," the same sensations become cues of energy. The brain then channels that energy into sharper delivery. Stress becomes stage presence instead of sabotage. Students can apply this during exams. A racing heart in the test hall may feel like panic. Recognizing it as the body preparing to focus reframes the moment. The stress response is not proof of failure. It is the system getting ready for effort. Breathing steady, then diving into the first question, uses the energy for concentration. In the workplace, deadlines bring pressure. Instead of treating stress as a signal of overload, treat it as a cue that stakes matter. The body is pushing you to prioritize, cut noise, and execute. By reframing the tension as preparation, you shift from dread to action. This mindset draws on biology. Stress hormones evolved to help survival. Elevated alertness meant noticing threats. Faster heart rate meant quick reaction. Today, the context is different, but the body's response is the same. Recognizing stress as readiness rather than weakness makes you work with your system instead of against it. The key is in interpretation. Stress is energy. You choose whether it is wasted in worry or harnessed in preparation. By reframing, you turn pressure into a signal that you are ready to act. Cold showers build mental toughness because they force you to face controlled discomfort. The water shocks your system, and every instinct tells you to step away. Choosing to stay puts you in direct practice with discipline. Each second becomes a small test of willpower. You train your mind to act even when your body resists. The first time is often the hardest. You turn the knob, the cold hits, and your breath shortens. Instead of fleeing, you steady yourself. You inhale slowly, exhale with control, and let the body adjust. After 30 seconds, the shock fades into sharp awareness. That adaptation teaches you that discomfort is temporary. The same lesson applies when you confront challenges outside the shower. Athletes use cold exposure to build resilience. A fighter may step into an ice bath after training. It is not just for recovery, it is practice in staying calm under strain. If they can breathe through cold that bites at every nerve, they can breathe through fatigue in the ring. The body learns, but more importantly, the mind learns not to panic. For daily life, the cold shower becomes a ritual of choosing challenge. Imagine waking tired, dreading the day. By starting with something you would rather avoid, you set the tone. You face discomfort first, so the rest of the day feels more manageable. It becomes easier to write the difficult email, make the call you postponed, or push through a demanding workout. The practice also clears mental fog. Cold triggers alertness, blood flow increases, breathing deepens, and thoughts sharpen. Many report leaving the shower not only awake, but more focused. It is less about energy from caffeine and more about energy from deliberate exposure. Consistency matters. Taking a cold shower once proves little. Taking one daily builds habit. The brain begins to associate discomfort with growth, not avoidance. Over time, you stop hesitating as much in other areas. Cold showers are not magic, but they are simple and accessible. By stepping into discomfort each morning, you rehearse resilience. You tell yourself with action, not words, that you can endure, adapt, and stay steady under pressure. That practice strengthens mental toughness in a way few other routines can. Gratitude journaling works because it trains your attention. The brain is built to notice problems first. Missed deadlines, unpaid bills, sharp comments. That bias kept people alive when danger lurked, but today it leaves many stuck in cycles of stress. Writing down what you are grateful for each day shifts the focus. You still see problems, but you balance them with things going right. Over time, this practice rewires how you view daily life. The exercise is simple. At the end of the day, open a notebook and list 3 things you appreciate. They do not need to be grand. A warm meal, a friend who called, or a walk in the sun. Work as well as major events. What matters is attention. By writing, you move the thought from vague feeling to solid record. The act of putting pen to paper makes it harder to dismiss. Consider someone working long hours under pressure. Without reflection, the days blur into stress. With a journal, they might record, "Team helped fix a bug," "Manager thanked me," and "Coffee with an old friend." These small moments shift perception. Instead of the day being only exhausting, it also holds connection, teamwork, and recognition. Families use gratitude journaling together. Parents ask children at night to share one good thing. A child might say, "I built a tower with blocks." The parent writes it down. Over weeks, the notebook becomes a record of small joys. Reading it later shows growth and warmth that might have been forgotten. The practice builds resilience. When facing setbacks, people with a gratitude habit recover faster. They see more than the loss because they have trained to notice positives. An athlete injured mid-season may journal, "I still have supportive teammates," or "I can use this time to study film." This reframing does not erase pain, but keeps perspective. The key is consistency. Daily entries, even brief ones, strengthen the habit. Some write in the morning to set a tone, others at night to close the day. Over time, the notebook becomes proof that even in hard stretches, life carries pieces of good worth noticing. Focusing on what you control brings clarity in a world full of noise. Many waste energy on events outside their reach. Market swings, gossip, bad weather, or decisions made by others. Worrying about these changes, nothing but drains attention. Shifting focus to controllable actions restores power. You can choose effort, attitude, preparation, and response. Everything else belongs to the category of concern but not control. Take sports as an example. A basketball player cannot control the referee's calls or the crowd's noise. They can control footwork, shot selection, and communication with teammates. By centering on those, they play with focus. Complaining about whistles does not win games. Executing fundamentals does. In the workplace, the same principle applies. A team member might worry about industry downturns or management reshuffles. Neither is in their hands. What is in their hands is skill development, task completion, and building reliable habits. By focusing there, they become valuable regardless of external shifts. Energy wasted on speculation can instead fuel growth. Students face this lesson during exams. They cannot control the exact questions on the test. They can control study hours, practice problems, and rest the night before. Stressing about the unknown blinds them to the actions that actually raise scores. Personal life shows the pattern as well. Someone stuck in traffic cannot will the cars to move. What they can control is choosing an alternate route, using the time to listen to a podcast, or practicing patience. Frustration does not clear the road. Choice changes the experience. Even in high-stakes situations, control lies in action, not outcome. A job seeker cannot guarantee an offer. They can prepare resumes, practice interviews, and expand their network. A patient cannot erase a diagnosis. They can follow treatment, seek second opinions, and take care of health routines. The outcome may vary, but the effort is owned. This mindset frees energy. Each time you strip away what is uncontrollable, you narrow focus to steps that matter. You trade helplessness for agency. By practicing this daily, you build resilience. You learn to act with precision instead of scattering effort across the uncontrollable. Laughter is more than entertainment. It is a physical reset. When you laugh, the body lowers cortisol, the hormone linked with stress. Muscles relax, breathing deepens, and blood flow improves. What feels like light amusement is actually a biological shift that eases tension and sharpens mood. In high-pressure settings, the ability to laugh can mean the difference between staying calm and burning out. Workplaces that encourage humor often see stronger teams. Picture a group facing a tight deadline. Frustration builds as issues pile up. Then someone makes a clever remark that breaks the tension. The team laughs, and for a moment, the stress eases. That release allows them to return to the problem with clearer heads. The work does not get easier, but their bodies stop operating in fight or flight. They can focus instead of spiral. In medicine, patients who laugh often during treatment report lower pain levels and improved outlook. The body responds to humor as if it were medicine itself. Hospitals sometimes bring in comedians or encourage staff to share light jokes because the physiological impact is real. Lower cortisol means better recovery, and improved mood means better cooperation with care. Personal relationships also benefit from shared laughter. A couple in conflict who can still joke together finds a path through arguments more easily. The laughter signals that connection remains, even during disagreement. Stress falls, walls drop, and solutions emerge. Friends bond fastest when humor flows because laughter creates trust. Even alone, laughter helps. Watching a comedy, reading a funny story, or recalling a ridiculous memory lightens the mind. Stress that felt crushing before may shrink after a few minutes of genuine laughter. The body's chemistry changes, and perspective follows. Leaders who use humor wisely build credibility. A manager who admits, "This project is giving me more gray hairs than my kids," earns a laugh and signals humility. That moment lowers tension and makes the leader more approachable. The science is clear. Laughter is not a distraction from stress, but an antidote to it. Each laugh resets the system, lowers cortisol, and restores balance. By laughing often, you build resilience, one smile at a time. Rituals ground you because they create stability in moments of change or stress. A ritual does not need to be religious or elaborate. It is any repeated act that carries meaning and signals to your mind that you are anchored. The structure matters as much as the content. When you repeat the same steps, you give your brain and body a cue. Here is safety, here is order. Consider an athlete before competition. Many tie their shoes the same way, stretch in the same sequence, or listen to the same song. The ritual tells their mind, it is time to compete. The routine steadies nerves and prepares focus. Without it, the noise of the event might overwhelm them. With it, they carry a pocket of calm onto the field. In daily life, rituals can serve the same role. A person who starts each morning by making coffee, journaling for 5 minutes, and reading a page of a book creates a rhythm that grounds them before the day's demands. The ritual is not about the coffee or the book alone, but about the signal. This is how the day begins, steady and intentional. At night, a wind-down ritual prepares the body for rest. Turning off screens, dimming lights, writing down tasks for tomorrow, and reading a few pages creates closure. The mind recognizes the sequence and lowers alertness. Sleep comes easier, not because of one action, but because the ritual trains the body to expect it. In stressful moments, grounding rituals work quickly. A nurse about to enter a chaotic shift might pause, take 3 deep breaths, and repeat a short phrase like, "one task at a time." The act takes seconds but restores balance. Soldiers in combat often rely on small rituals, checking gear in a precise order to stay calm in extreme stress. Personal rituals carry meaning when attached to values. Lighting a candle before writing can remind someone of focus and discipline. Taking a short walk after work can mark the transition from job to home life. The ritual becomes a signal of identity, not just habit. Repetition grounds you by creating a pattern that holds steady when the rest of life feels uncertain. Stepping outside gives you perspective. 4 walls trap your attention on the nearest problem. Air, sky, and distance reset how you see it. Your body moves, your breath changes, your mind follows. Picture a software engineer stuck on a bug. The screen looks the same after 2 hours. They walk outside for 10 minutes. Trees move, cars pass, and the brain switches modes. A pattern appears on return, a missing check, and off by one. The fix was there, but the room kept them in a loop. A manager faces a tense decision. Slack pings, stack up. The office hums. She steps out, circles the block, and asks 3 simple questions. What is the goal? What is in my control? What is the next clean step? The noise fades. She returns and writes one clear note that moves the team. Students can use the same reset. Before an exam, a quick walk under open sky lowers strain and sharpens recall. The change of light and motion tells the nervous system it is safe. Calm focus returns. Even conflict softens outdoors. 2 teammates stuck in a stale meeting take a walking talk, shoulders drop, voices steady. Ideas feel less personal when the horizon is wide. Creatives know this well. Writers find the line on a short loop around the block. Designers see a shape in a shadow on the sidewalk. Musicians hear rhythm in footsteps and traffic. Outside is a library of cues. Make it a habit. Place a short walk after hard sprints, before big calls, and when stress climbs, leave your phone in your pocket. Look far then near. Breathe through the nose. Count 6 steps in, 6 steps out. Let your senses do the rest. Notice smells, temperature, and small shifts in color and sound. Sensory detail loosens rigid thought and invites new links your desk could not reveal. Try daily. Weather helps, not hurts. Gray days, cold air, or heat, all mark a switch. The point is change, not comfort. Step outside to widen the frame. The world grows larger and the problem shrinks enough to solve. Carrying a notebook everywhere gives you a tool to capture thought before it slips. Ideas appear at odd times, on trains, in meetings, while waiting in line. Without a system, most vanish. A notebook holds them in place. Writing also sharpens thinking. Vague impressions turn into clear words when they meet the page. Writers know this well. Many keep small notebooks in their pockets, ready for fragments of dialogue or an image that sparks a scene. Later, those scraps become paragraphs, then stories. Without the notebook, the detail fades. The same applies outside writing. A manager might overhear a useful phrase in a client call. Jotted down, it becomes part of a pitch. Forgotten, it never helps. A notebook also works as a stress release. Instead of carrying thoughts in your head, you store them. A student, overwhelmed with assignments, writes each task down. The weight shifts from memory to paper. Clarity comes, and planning can start. The notebook becomes both map and anchor. It is also a place for problem solving. Engineers sketch designs, marketers list headlines, doctors note patient patterns. Even crude drawings or broken lists matter, because they catch the first spark you can refine later. The act of writing while ideas are fresh often leads to breakthroughs. Carrying a notebook builds habit. By using it daily, you teach yourself that thoughts matter. You honor them enough to record them. Over time, you fill shelves with volumes that show not only solutions but also how your thinking has grown. These records become resources to revisit, refine, and expand. Unlike phones, notebooks carry no alerts, no battery life, no distractions. The act of writing by hand slows thought just enough to make it deliberate, but slowing reveals connections you might miss when typing. Notes taken by hand also imprint better in memory. The tool is simple, paper and pen, yet its use changes work and life. A notebook at hand turns chance thoughts into captured insights. You stop relying on recall and start building a library. Every page holds proof that attention, once written, becomes lasting. Constraints are often seen as limits, but they can sharpen creativity. When you cannot do everything, you must choose. That act of narrowing forces new paths. With endless options, the mind drifts. With boundaries, it focuses. Consider a writer given a blank page and total freedom. The openness feels paralyzing. Now give that same writer a rule. The story must fit in 100 words, or it must begin with a single sentence. The constraint frees them from endless choice. They work inside the frame, and ideas surface. Many forms of art thrive on this. Haiku in poetry, sonnets in structure, or jazz within scales. Boundaries push expression. Businesses also spark ideas through constraints. A startup with little funding must find lean solutions, lacking a big marketing budget. They focus on direct referrals or building products so useful that word of mouth spreads. The shortage of money creates ingenuity. Larger companies, with fewer limits, often waste resources on campaigns that add little. In product design, constraints shape innovation. Engineers told to make a phone lighter and smaller invented new materials and compressed circuits. If no weight or size limit existed, the incentive to rethink parts would vanish. The challenge made progress possible. Daily life offers the same lesson. Planning a meal with only 5 ingredients forces creativity. You mix flavors differently, and the dish surprises you. Working with limited time, you cut distractions and find cleaner solutions. Even parenting shows this. Entertaining a child without screens pushes you to invent games with what is at hand. Constraints also train resilience. A musician practicing with only 3 strings learns new patterns. Later, with all 6, they play with deeper skill. A runner restricted to short intervals by injury finds ways to build stamina through form and focus. When the constraint lifts, performance improves. The key is to stop viewing limits as walls and instead see them as frames. Frames guide vision. By accepting constraints, you force yourself to ask better questions. What can be built within these rules? What can be expressed with only these tools? Often the answer carries more originality than work created with no boundaries at all. No idea comes from nowhere. Every artist, writer, or inventor builds on what came before. The key is not to copy, but to remix. When you steal like an artist, you study what inspires you, absorb it, and twist it into something new. Copying duplicates, remixing transforms. Take music as an example. Hip-hop producers lift samples from jazz, funk, or soul. A drum beat from the 1970s, layered with a modern bass line and new lyrics, becomes a track that sounds fresh. The sample alone is old. The remix creates energy unique to the artist. This is not theft, but recognition that creativity is conversation across time. Writers do the same. Shakespeare borrowed plots from older works. His genius was not in inventing every story, but in reworking them with sharper characters and deeper themes. Modern authors take cues from classics, reshape them, and speak to today's world. What matters is not where the spark comes from, but what you do with it. In design, remixing drives innovation. The smartphone did not appear from a blank slate. It combined existing elements, cellular networks, touch screens, compact processors, into a single device. Each piece existed before. The genius was in blending them. By rethinking how parts fit together, engineers created something that felt revolutionary. Even in daily work, remixing matters. A manager might read about techniques in sports coaching and apply them to team leadership. The field differs, but the principle transfers. Borrowing across contexts sparks originality because it forces adaptation. Copying ends at imitation. Remixing goes further, asking how can I make this fit my voice, my context, my problem. A painter who copies Van Gogh only repeats his strokes. A painter who studies him, then uses the bold colors to portray city streets instead of fields, has remixed. The influence shows, but the result is theirs. The difference lies in intent. Copying hides behind someone else's work. Remixing honors influence while adding perspective. By drawing from many sources, mixing styles, and bending rules, you create something that carries both roots and originality. All creative work lives in this tension between what existed and what you reshape into your own. Switching mediums changes how you think. When you are stuck in one form, your ideas grow narrow. Moving from writing to drawing, or from speaking to sketching, forces the brain to process in new ways. Each medium highlights details that the others hide. Take problem solving as an example. A software engineer trying to explain a system may write long paragraphs of documentation. The words grow dense, and the meaning slips. By drawing a diagram instead, boxes, arrows, labels, the structure appears at once. What felt complicated in words becomes simple in shapes. Later, when presenting to others, talking it through adds clarity again. Switching mediums makes the invisible visible. Writers also benefit from this shift. A poet drafts lines on the page, then reads them aloud. The rhythm changes when heard, and weak phrases reveal themselves. A novel scene that looks fine in text may sound awkward in voice. Speaking the words helps the writer tighten the work. The reverse is true as well. A speaker who records themselves may later write a transcript, noticing patterns or gaps missed in real time. Students use this technique when studying. Reading notes is one medium. Rewriting them into diagrams or charts is another. Explaining them aloud to a friend adds a third. Each switch deepens recall because the brain handles the same material through multiple channels. Repetition alone does not build memory as strongly as re-expression across mediums. Artists often explore this naturally. A photographer might sketch ideas before taking shots. A painter may talk through their vision with peers before touching a brush. Switching mediums shakes loose assumptions and sparks new insight. Even in daily life, this works. Imagine planning a move. Writing a checklist captures tasks. Drawing a floor plan shows where furniture will go. Talking it out with a partner uncovers priorities. Each medium contributes, and the plan strengthens. The principle is simple. No single medium captures thought fully. Writing orders logic. Drawing reveals structure. Speaking exposes rhythm. By moving between them, you not only communicate better but also think more clearly. The act of switching mediums expands both creativity and precision. A swipe file is a personal archive of ideas you collect for future use. Writers, designers, and advertisers have relied on them for decades. The principle is simple. When you see something that works, a headline, a layout, a phrase, a photo, you save it. Later, when you need inspiration, you pull from this file. It does not replace original thinking, it feeds it. Consider a copywriter faced with a blank page. Instead of staring at the cursor, they open their swipe file. Inside are hundreds of ads, taglines, and campaign notes gathered over years. A line from a 1950s magazine sparks a new angle. A recent email subject line triggers a variation. The writer is not copying but using patterns as springboards. Without the file, they rely only on memory, which is limited. With it, they have a library of tested ideas ready to adapt. Designers work the same way. A swipe file might hold color palettes from posters, layouts from websites, or typography samples. When a new project arrives, they scroll through and find forms they can remix. The act of collecting sharpens their eye. They notice details others ignore because they are used to saving and cataloging them. Over time, the file becomes not just a tool but a record of taste developing. Even outside creative fields, swipe files are useful. A teacher might keep notes on clever ways others explain math problems. A lawyer might collect phrasing from strong arguments. A chef might jot down flavor combinations from menus. In each case, the file becomes a shortcut to tested ideas. The format does not matter. It can be a physical folder of clippings, a notebook of handwritten quotes, or a digital archive of screenshots and links. What matters is consistency. Each time you encounter something that sparks interest, you save it. Later, you have a reservoir to draw from instead of starting cold. A swipe file builds compound value. The more you add, the stronger it becomes. It teaches you to spot what works and gives you raw material to reframe. Collecting inspiration this way ensures you are never starting from zero. You are always building on a foundation you created. Starting with bad ideas frees the mind. When you demand brilliance from the first moment, pressure locks you up. By saying, let's think of the worst ideas possible, you break that tension. The bad ideas clear the way for better ones because they silence the inner critic that blocks creativity. Consider a team tasked with naming a new product. If the first attempt must be perfect, silence falls. Nobody wants to look foolish. Instead, the leader says, let's list the worst names we can think of. Suddenly, the room loosens. People shout absurd titles, laugh, and pile on. A silly suggestion might spark a serious one. What started as Toaster 3000 might evolve into a clever name because it shifted the group's mindset from fear of judgment to freedom of play. Writers use this method too. A novelist who cannot start a chapter may write the clumsiest version they can on purpose. Bad metaphors, flat dialogue, even nonsense sentences go onto the page. Once words exist, momentum builds. Revising poor material is easier than creating perfect lines from nothing. Many breakthroughs arrive only after the writer gives themselves permission to write poorly. In business, brainstorming bad ideas often reveals hidden assumptions. A marketing team might ask, what's the worst campaign we could run? Suggestions like insult the customers or spend the budget on one billboard in the desert sound ridiculous, but they highlight real issues, tone, reach, and relevance. By flipping the question, the team sees the outlines of what not to do, which sharpens the sense of what will work. Students can apply the same trick. If asked to solve a problem, they might first outline the most wrong solutions they can imagine. Those wrong answers expose gaps in knowledge and sometimes lead directly to the right path. The exercise removes fear of error and replaces it with curiosity. The brain thrives under contrast. By surfacing the worst options, you lower the stakes, spark humor, and widen perspective. Bad ideas serve as stepping stones. They may look useless, but they mark the path toward the ideas worth keeping. Changing locations refreshes perspective, because environment shapes thought. When you sit in the same room every day, patterns repeat. The same desk, same light, and same sounds cue the brain to cycle through familiar ideas. By moving to a different place, you shift context. The brain receives new inputs, and those inputs trigger new connections. Writers know this instinctively. A poet stuck at home may carry a notebook to a park. The movement of people, the sound of birds, even the rhythm of footsteps around them, spark different words than the silence of a living room. What once felt blocked begins to flow, not because talent changed, but because the scene did. Students experience the same when studying. Reading in the library for hours may blur into fatigue. Moving to a cafe, or even a quiet bench outdoors, shifts the energy. The new setting offers fresh cues that help recall and focus. Later, during exams, memory often links back to the place where it was studied. By diversifying locations, recall strengthens. In the workplace, teams benefit from changing scenery. Meetings held in the same conference room can grow stale. When the same walls and chairs surround you, people fall into routine roles and responses. Shift the meeting outdoors or to a different office, and the conversation changes. A new space disrupts stale patterns and often makes people more open. Even a walking meeting creates movement that sparks ideas. Athletes train this way too. A runner who usually practices on a treadmill may take to a trail. The uneven terrain forces new focus, and the scenery breaks monotony. The body works harder in small ways, and the mind feels renewed. The same principle applies to problem solving. New ground means new perspective. Even small shifts matter. Moving your laptop from the desk to the kitchen table can change how you see a task. Rearranging furniture or facing a window instead of a wall alters how you feel about the work. The key is novelty. Change forces attention, and attention sparks perspective. By breaking the cycle of sameness, you open space for ideas that routine would never allow. C. Working with people who think differently improves results. When everyone approaches problems the same way, solutions tend to be narrow. Diverse thinkers bring unique perspectives. They question assumptions. They notice patterns others miss. Collaboration among varied minds produces ideas that are more creative, more robust, and more practical. Picture a team developing a new product. If every member has the same background, they might focus on the same set of features and risks. They could overlook potential problems or opportunities. Now, imagine the team includes designers, engineers, marketers, and even someone from outside the industry. Each person views the product through a different lens. The designer thinks about user experience, the engineer about technical feasibility, the marketer about customer perception, and the outsider about gaps the industry usually ignores. Together they identify issues early, propose solutions from different angles, and anticipate challenges the original team would have missed. Diverse collaboration also challenges your thinking. It forces you to defend ideas and consider alternatives. If everyone agrees with you, you might feel confident, but confidence alone does not guarantee a good solution. When you present an idea to someone with a different perspective, they highlight blind spots. This feedback strengthens your decisions. Collaboration with diverse thinkers requires active listening. It is not enough to invite different perspectives. You must engage with them, ask questions, explore reasoning, avoid dismissing suggestions that seem unfamiliar at first. Often the most unusual ideas contain hidden value. For example, a small startup might want to increase efficiency in operations. The founder invites a process engineer, a software developer, and a finance specialist to a planning session. Each suggests changes the others would not have considered. The engineer identifies workflow bottlenecks. The developer proposes a digital tool to automate tasks, and the finance specialist highlights cost implications. By combining their insights, the startup improves efficiency while controlling expenses. Working with diverse thinkers also fosters adaptability. You learn to navigate differing opinions and approaches. You discover methods and strategies outside your usual toolkit. This ability becomes especially valuable in complex projects, where no single viewpoint can solve every problem. By intentionally seeking out varied perspectives, you create solutions that are stronger, more resilient, and more innovative. Asking "what if" changes how you approach problems. It opens possibilities that routine thinking misses. Most people focus on what is already known. They stick to familiar methods and repeat past solutions. Asking "what if" forces you to step outside assumptions. It explores alternatives, tests limits, and uncovers opportunities. Consider a product designer working on a smartphone. If they follow standard practices, they focus on size, battery life, and camera quality. Asking "what if the phone had no physical buttons" shifts the discussion. It leads to touch-sensitive surfaces or gesture controls. What if it used a different material? Could result in a lighter, more durable design. Each question uncovers a path not previously considered. The process does not guarantee success, but it expands the space of ideas. What if also helps in risk management. For example, a project manager planning a construction project might ask, "what if the supplier delays delivery?" or "what if it rains for a week?" These questions allow the team to create contingency plans in advance. They think through responses, allocate resources, and reduce the chance of being caught off guard. The questions themselves prompt action before problems arise. The technique encourages curiosity in everyday tasks as well. A teacher preparing a lesson could ask, "what if I let students design their own projects?" or "what if I use a game instead of a lecture?" These questions spark engagement and may improve learning outcomes. A chef could ask, "what if I substitute this ingredient?" or "what if I cook it at a lower temperature and discover a new flavor or texture?" Asking "what if" requires a mindset that values exploration over immediate answers. It is less about finding a single solution and more about mapping possibilities. The questions can be small or large, practical or imaginative. They encourage experimentation, discussion, and iteration. By asking "what if" constantly, you challenge assumptions, reveal hidden options, and generate ideas that would remain invisible under normal thinking. The habit trains your brain to notice opportunities and threats alike, making planning and creativity more deliberate and effective. Sleep is not just rest. It is a time when your brain processes information, organizes experiences, and makes connections you might miss while awake. Creative insights often emerge during sleep or dreaming. Ideas that seem stuck in your mind during the day can take shape when your brain works in the background. The act of sleeping allows thoughts to combine in unusual ways, producing solutions that feel sudden but are built on existing knowledge. Imagine a scientist struggling with a complex problem. They spend hours reviewing data and running simulations, but find no clear answer. After a night of sleep, they wake with a new perspective. Perhaps a pattern in the data becomes obvious, or an approach that seemed impossible now appears feasible. The insight did not come from nowhere. It formed while the brain processed fragments of information unconsciously. Many notable discoveries have followed a similar path. Dreams can work the same way. They allow the mind to explore ideas without the limits of logic or reality. A writer may dream a scene that captures emotion perfectly, or a musician may hear a melody that inspires a new composition. The brain experiments freely, combining memories, observations, and knowledge in ways that awake thinking often restricts. Paying attention to dreams, writing them down, or reflecting on them can turn fleeting ideas into concrete creative work. Sleep also strengthens memory, which supports creativity. The brain consolidates important information while discarding noise. Concepts, skills, and lessons from the day are reinforced. This organization creates mental space for new connections. A software developer who reviews a challenging algorithm and then sleeps often wakes with a clearer understanding or a simpler approach to coding problems. Even short naps can help. 15 to 20 minutes of rest can refresh attention and make it easier to see solutions to problems. Longer sleep cycles, including REM stages, encourage deeper integration of ideas. Treating sleep as a tool for creativity means respecting its role in problem solving. Scheduling rest and allowing time for dreams can transform how you work, helping solutions surface naturally rather than forcing them. The insights gained from sleep are subtle but powerful, shaping decisions, work, and creative projects without conscious effort. Tracking habits helps you see what you actually do versus what you think you do. Many people have goals to exercise, read, or eat better. They start strong but quickly lose track. Without clear records, it is easy to overestimate progress or miss patterns. Using a journal or an app gives structure. It provides a simple way to monitor daily actions, notice trends, and adjust behavior. A journal works because writing by hand creates awareness. Each day you record what you did, the time you did it, and how consistent you were. Over a week you can see patterns. For example, you might notice that you skip exercise on days you stay up late, or that reading only happens in the morning. This awareness helps you plan better. You can shift routines, set reminders, or change triggers to support your goals. Apps provide a similar function but with extra tools. Most habit apps allow you to set streaks, track completion rates, and view charts of progress over time. Suppose you want to drink more water. Recording each glass in an app shows not only your total intake, but also when you fall short. The visual feedback can highlight trends, like missing hydration on busy work days. You can adjust routines, place a bottle at your desk, or set alarms. The app makes the pattern visible in a way memory alone cannot. Tracking habits also supports accountability. Seeing daily records builds motivation. Missing a day stands out, which prompts reflection. You can ask yourself why the habit slipped and make adjustments. For instance, if journaling shows you consistently skip meditation in the afternoon, you might move it to the morning or combine it with another routine. This method works for any type of habit. Exercise, sleep, reading, work sessions, diet, even small behaviors like stretching or checking posture can be tracked. Journals and apps provide a clear record and allow you to measure consistency over time. They transform vague intentions into visible actions. By consistently tracking habits, you gather data on behavior, notice patterns, and make informed decisions. This simple practice turns goals into measurable progress and creates a foundation for lasting change. Identity shapes behavior more than rules or goals alone. When you act based on who you believe you are, habits stick. Identity-based habits focus on changing your sense of self rather than only what you do. Instead of saying, "I want to run 3 times a week," you say, "I'm the type of person who runs regularly." The action aligns with your identity, making it easier to follow through and harder to quit. Consider someone learning to write consistently. A standard goal might be, "I will write 500 words a day." The person may succeed some days and fail others. Feeling discouraged, switching to an identity-based habit changes the mindset. "I'm the type of person who writes every day." Missing a day feels temporary because it does not define the whole identity. The focus is on building a consistent self-image, which motivates long-term behavior. Identity-based habits also influence decision-making. If you identify as someone who values health, small choices become automatic. You choose water over soda, stairs over elevators, or a healthy snack over junk food. The habit follows naturally from the identity. The decision does not require negotiation. It reflects who you are. This approach works for professional habits too. A manager might adopt the identity, "I'm the type of leader who listens before acting." Meetings and feedback sessions shift automatically. The identity guides behavior, making actions consistent with values. Similarly, a student who identifies as the type of person who studies first, then relaxes, develops routines that support learning without relying solely on discipline or reminders. Identity-based habits build momentum through repetition. Each action reinforces the self-image. Running once confirms "I'm a runner," writing once confirms "I'm a writer," preparing meals once confirms "I'm someone who eats healthily." Over time, small behaviors accumulate into a strong pattern, rooted in identity rather than temporary motivation. Forming identity-based habits starts with clarity. Define the type of person you want to be and link behaviors to that image. Make the statement simple and specific. Repeat it to yourself, then act in ways that confirm it. Over time, the identity becomes the lens through which all choices are made, and habits follow naturally because they are expressions of who you are. Fasting is a simple way to reset discipline. It requires control and focus. When you fast, you intentionally avoid food for a set period. The practice is not about extreme restriction or punishment. It is about training your mind to resist impulses and build self-control. Fasting highlights how often habits run on autopilot. Eating is usually automatic, at certain times in certain places, or triggered by emotion. By pausing, you regain awareness of choices. Imagine a professional who tends to snack throughout the day. The habit is small but constant, often unnoticed. They decide to fast from breakfast to lunch. During this period, every time hunger appears, they notice it, observe the urge, and choose whether to respond. The practice strengthens attention and decision-making. When they resume eating, they do so intentionally, not automatically. Fasting can also extend beyond food. Some people fast from social media, email, or entertainment. The principle is the same. Removing habitual access creates space for focus and reflection. A student might skip phone use for an afternoon. At first, they feel restless. Gradually, they notice time opens for reading, thinking, or planning. The mind becomes sharper because it is not constantly reacting to external stimuli. Discipline gained from fasting transfers to other areas. A person who successfully fasts learns patience and control. They may approach work tasks with the same calm focus, resist distractions, and manage impulses better. Fasting acts as a mental reset. It reminds you that habits can be shaped consciously rather than being purely reactive. Fasting also helps you evaluate priorities. Going without something familiar highlights its role in your life. You may notice that some habits are unnecessary or unhelpful. For example, skipping snacks might reveal that many cravings are emotional rather than physical. Skipping social media might show how much time is spent scrolling without benefit. The key to fasting is planning. Choose a safe, manageable period and be mindful during it. Observe physical and mental reactions. Use the experience to reinforce self-awareness and control. Fasting is not just about abstaining. It is about training your mind to notice, choose, and act with intention. Over time, occasional fasting strengthens discipline, sharpens focus, and reshapes habits in ways that extend far beyond the fast itself. Negative self-talk slows progress. It appears as thoughts like, "I can't do this," or "I'm not good enough." These statements shape behavior. They reduce effort and increase stress. Replacing them with a coaching voice changes the outcome. A coaching voice is supportive, realistic, and focused on growth. It guides action instead of criticizing. Consider an athlete preparing for a race. Negative self-talk might say, "I'll never finish in time." This thought reduces confidence and energy. A coaching voice reframes it. "I've trained for this. I will pace myself and stay focused." The difference is subtle but powerful. The first approach erodes performance. The second strengthens it. It encourages planning, effort, and attention rather than surrender. Replacing negative thoughts requires awareness. You must notice when your mind slips into criticism or doubt. Journaling or voice recording can help. For example, a writer might note, "I always struggle with the introduction." The coaching voice reframes it. "I can start anywhere. I can revise the introduction later if needed." The statement acknowledges the challenge without stopping action. Coaching language also emphasizes process over outcome. A student studying for exams might think, "I'm terrible at math." The coaching voice shifts this to, "I will review one topic at a time and check my understanding." The focus moves from identity or fixed ability to actionable steps. It makes improvement tangible and achievable. The method works in small daily situations too. If you spill coffee, instead of thinking, "I'm so clumsy," say, "It happens, I'll clean this up," and move on. This approach reduces frustration and preserves energy. It allows you to stay present and productive, rather than dwelling on mistakes. Over time, consistent use of a coaching voice rewires how you respond to challenges. Thoughts guide action. By intentionally replacing criticism with guidance, you reinforce confidence and resilience. The brain gradually learns to interpret obstacles as opportunities to act rather than evidence of failure. In practice, this shift turns self-talk into a tool for performance, problem-solving, and personal growth. rather than a source of doubt or limitation. Personal core values are the principles that guide your choices and behavior. They define what matters most to you. When you are clear about your values, decisions become easier. You can measure opportunities and actions against them. Without defined values, you risk following external pressures or habits that do not serve you. Values act as a compass, keeping actions aligned with identity and long-term goals. Start by identifying what feels essential in life. Think about moments when you felt proud, fulfilled, or truly satisfied. Ask why those experiences mattered. For example, someone may feel proud after helping a colleague solve a problem. The underlying value could be service or collaboration. Another person may feel fulfilled after finishing a creative project. The value there could be innovation or mastery. Observing these patterns reveals consistent themes that reflect personal priorities. Defining core values also requires honesty. Many people choose values that sound admirable but do not match behavior. For instance, someone may claim integrity as a core value but regularly cut corners at work. Values only have meaning when actions align. Writing them down helps. Select 3 to 5 principles that feel fundamental. These might include honesty, discipline, curiosity, compassion, or resilience. Keep the wording simple and precise to ensure clarity in daily decisions. A manager facing a tough business decision can ask, which option aligns with my core values? If transparency is a key value, they might prioritize open communication even if it is uncomfortable. A student choosing between part-time work and study can evaluate which choice honors learning, growth, or balance. Values provide a consistent standard that reduces uncertainty and regret. Values also shape long-term behavior and goals. When decisions reflect your principles, you build a coherent life pattern. Over time, habits, relationships, and career paths naturally align with what matters most. Defining personal core values is not a one-time task. It requires reflection and adjustment as circumstances and understanding evolve. The practice anchors decisions, supports intentional living, and provides a stable foundation for both everyday actions and significant life choices. Implementation intentions create a clear plan for action. They use the formula if X then Y to link a situation with a specific response. This method removes hesitation and uncertainty. When a trigger occurs, the response is automatic. The brain recognizes the pattern and acts without requiring willpower in the moment. For example, someone who wants to exercise regularly might say, "If it is 6 a.m., then I will put on my running shoes and go for a jog." The trigger is the time and the response is the action. By specifying the context and behavior, the decision is simplified. There is no debate in the morning about whether to exercise. The plan is clear, and the behavior becomes routine over time. Implementation intentions work in daily habits beyond fitness. A professional trying to reduce distractions might set an intention like, "If I sit at my desk, then I will silence notifications and close unnecessary tabs." The trigger is the act of sitting down to work. The response is a concrete behavior that supports focus. Each time the trigger occurs, the intended action follows automatically. The method also helps with challenging situations. Suppose someone wants to respond calmly in conflict. They could create the intention, "If someone criticizes me, then I will take 3 deep breaths before replying." By defining the trigger and the action beforehand, it is easier to control emotions in the moment. The preset plan replaces reactive habits with deliberate behavior. Implementation intentions reinforce goals because they link context with action. A student preparing for exams could say, "If it is 7 p.m., then I will review 1 chapter of my notes." The combination of time and behavior reduces procrastination. By repeating the pattern consistently, the brain learns the routine, making it easier to follow through without constant self-reminders. This approach works best when intentions are specific and realistic. Vague plans like "I will study more" leave room for indecision. Clear triggers and precise actions turn intentions into behavior. Over time, implementation intentions reduce mental friction, strengthen habits, and support consistent action. They make goal-directed behavior predictable and reliable by connecting everyday situations with deliberate responses. Keystone habits are small behaviors that influence many areas of life. They create a ripple effect. When you adopt them, other positive actions follow naturally. Exercise, sleep, and reading are common keystone habits. Each one improves energy, focus, and decision-making. They change routines in ways that support other goals. Exercise is a keystone habit because it affects both body and mind. Someone who starts running in the morning often begins eating healthier, sleeping better, and organizing their day more efficiently. The simple act of moving regularly triggers changes in routines, confidence, and mindset. Even small workouts, repeated consistently, create momentum that extends into other behaviors. Sleep is another keystone habit. A person who prioritizes 7 to 8 hours of sleep wakes up alert and focused. They make better choices throughout the day because decision fatigue is lower. For instance, a well-rested employee is more likely to prepare meals, exercise, or manage tasks efficiently. Sleep anchors routines. Without it, even strong intentions can falter. Reading is a keystone habit for mental growth and discipline. A person who reads daily expands knowledge, vocabulary, and perspective. This habit improves problem-solving skills and creativity. Reading also encourages reflection, patience, and curiosity. It influences conversations, work, and even other habits. Someone who reads regularly may plan better, write more clearly, or approach challenges with deeper insight. The power of keystone habits comes from their ability to trigger chains of positive behaviors. Exercise, sleep, and reading do more than benefit health, rest, or intellect. They create structures that reinforce other routines. For example, exercising in the morning sets a tone of discipline that carries through work and meals. Reading before bed encourages calmness and mental organization, supporting better sleep. Prioritizing sleep gives energy to follow exercise plans and engage with reading. Keystone habits require consistency, not intensity. A 20-minute walk, 6 hours of good sleep, or 10 pages of reading each day can start the ripple effect. Over time, these habits build a framework for other behaviors, reduce friction in daily routines, and improve overall productivity. They act as anchors, making it easier to adopt additional positive practices without relying solely on willpower. Saying no is a skill that protects time, energy, and focus. Many people agree to requests out of habit, politeness, or fear of disappointing others. This leads to overcommitment and stress. Practicing saying no without guilt allows you to set clear boundaries. It is not about rejecting people personally, but about prioritizing your goals and responsibilities. The first step is understanding your limits. Know what you can realistically handle in a day or week. For example, if you are already committed to a project, a friend asks you to help with theirs, and you feel stretched thin, saying yes could compromise both tasks. A simple response like, "I can't take that on right now," communicates limits without apology. Another strategy is framing no positively. Instead of focusing on what you cannot do, offer alternatives if appropriate. A colleague asks you to attend a meeting, but your schedule is full. You might say, "I can't attend this session, but I can review the notes afterward." This communicates cooperation while maintaining boundaries. Practicing no also involves anticipating requests. Visualize scenarios where you might be asked to take on more than you can manage. Rehearse clear, polite responses. For instance, a family member invites you to an event that conflicts with work. You can respond, "I appreciate the invitation, but I need to focus on work commitments. Let's plan something another time." Preparing responses reduces hesitation and guilt in the moment. Over time, saying no becomes a habit that supports long-term productivity and well-being. It allows you to focus on priorities rather than constantly reacting to external demands. People around you learn to respect your boundaries, and you gain confidence in managing commitments. The key is consistency. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to balance obligations with personal goals. Saying no is not rejection of people, it is affirmation of priorities. By setting clear limits and expressing them politely, you protect your time, reduce stress, and create space for meaningful work and relationships. Practicing no regularly strengthens both personal and professional life by ensuring that energy goes toward actions that matter most. Review your day nightly. Reviewing your day at night is a simple way to improve performance and self-awareness. Taking a few minutes to reflect on what went well and what didn't creates insight into habits, decisions, and routines. It allows you to notice patterns that either support or hinder your goals. The practice is not about judgment. It is about understanding and adjustment. Start by noting successes. For example, if you finished a report on time, responded to emails efficiently, or exercised as planned, acknowledge it. Writing down or mentally recording achievements reinforces positive behavior. Recognizing small wins encourages repetition and builds confidence. It also highlights what strategies or approaches work. A person might realize that tackling the hardest task first in the morning consistently leads to smoother afternoons. Next, examine what didn't go as planned. Maybe you procrastinated on a task, missed a meeting, or reacted poorly in a conversation. Be specific and objective. Instead of saying, "I was lazy," identify the circumstances. "I spent an hour on social media instead of finishing the draft." Clear observations point to actionable changes rather than vague self-criticism. Reflecting nightly also allows you to plan for improvement. If a meeting ran longer than expected, you might adjust future scheduling. If a habit slipped, such as skipping a workout, you can decide how to recover or prevent it next time. The review creates a feedback loop: observation, analysis, adjustment. Over time, this loop improves efficiency and decision-making. The method works well with a journal or simple notes on a phone. One format is to write 3 points that went well and 3 areas for improvement. Another approach is to ask, "What did I do today that aligns with my goals, and what could I change tomorrow?" Even 2 or 3 minutes of reflection solidifies awareness. Nightly review also reinforces accountability. It prevents minor issues from becoming habits by highlighting them promptly. By examining the day regularly, you gain insight into behavior patterns, decision-making, and priorities. Over time, reflection builds clarity, focus, and control, allowing you to approach the next day with intention, rather than reacting to events as they occur. Playing the long game means focusing on steady, consistent effort rather than short bursts of intensity. Results come from repetition over time, not from occasional spikes of work or motivation. Habits, skills, and progress compound, which means small actions repeated consistently create far greater outcomes than one-time efforts. Consider saving money. Depositing a small amount every week into an investment account grows over years. A large one-time deposit may give a temporary boost, but it does not match the power of regular contributions. The compounding effect builds quietly. Over time, the consistent effort surpasses isolated bursts, and the results become visible and meaningful. The same principle applies to learning. A student who studies 30 minutes each day builds knowledge steadily. Another student who crams all night may achieve temporary gains but cannot sustain mastery. Daily practice strengthens memory, understanding, and skill. Over months, the first student's small, consistent effort far outweighs the sporadic, intense effort of the second. Exercise works the same way. Running 10 minutes every morning may seem minor, but the habit compounds into endurance, strength, and energy over months. A weekend of intense workouts cannot replace daily movement. The long game is about patience and trust in the process. It values persistence over visible, immediate rewards. Playing the long game also reduces stress and prevents burnout. When you rely on short bursts, pressure builds to produce results quickly. In contrast, consistent effort spreads work evenly, making progress manageable and reliable. For example, a writer who writes 300 words daily produces over 100,000 words in a year. The individual sessions feel small, but their cumulative effect is enormous. The mindset of the long game shifts focus from results to systems. Instead of obsessing over immediate outcomes, attention goes to creating routines and habits that support growth. Consistency compounds because each day builds on the previous one. Success is not sudden, it is gradual. Over time, small repeated actions create expertise, resilience, and achievement that no short-term effort could match. The long game rewards patience, persistence, and steady discipline, proving that consistency, even in small doses, outperforms bursts every time.